And I note that we have a quorum and it's 7:01. So it is 7:01 p.m. on January 3rd, 2024. So I will call the Board of Health meeting to order. And since it's a virtual meeting, the board members can identify who they are and that they're present by voice. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Matt Beavers present.
Julie Dreyfus present.
Diana Hook present.
Okay. And so we have, actually, this is an old agenda. So Matt and I disconnected my email because the Outlook program slows 365, slows my connection down even further. So I will take this down and then you can take over chairing the meeting from here.
Sounds good.
I will mention we're just talking about who is present, and we can go over the agenda in a moment, but in terms of order, so and her husband, sorry, I'm really bad with names, can't recall, we're here at the beginning, and that may be a quick item before we move on to other things. So.
Sure. So I think we also had discussed wanting to talk about the Charles River Health District and Train MA early on, because I believe I saw Carrie here.
Yes,
well.
And the food inspector is also here, so we'll have to decide which way to go.
And I know we also have a number of people here for the Farm Road Homes discussion, so it's a lot of stuff. But I think let's start off by just amending the agenda.
Okay, and maybe have Rebecca's just about to come on. Okay. So when she's
Rebecca,
fully
do you want to announce your presence once you're here?
Yes. Looks like she's connected. So Rebecca, would you like to announce that you're present, state that you're present?
Let's just move ahead and Rebecca can speak up when she is able to come off mute. So we had a number of items, largely permit renewals that were added less than 48 hours in advance and need to act on so that they can continue operating. So we have one installer permit renewal, a number of food establishment and tobacco sales renewals. And then the last updated was we were just at the last minute received updated floor plans for 21 Ward Lane. Which was in response to our discussion from the last meeting. So do I have a motion to add these items to the agenda?
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Present, and I vote aye.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. So I think, I do want to sort of get through some of the meteor items first, but I think just quickly, since Tom is here, I don't know if I want to go through and vote on all these, but Tom, if we can get your input, that would be great on all the food establishment permit renewals. Any concerns or anything to highlight amongst any of these?
Yes, I just spoke with Mark Orem prior to the meeting. We do have some issues with water quality surrounding acetone readings. I think Mark wanted to brief the board on that for Sherborn Fuel and then Heritage and Pine Hill, I believe.
That is correct, Tom. If you want, I can give the board an update. I spoke to the chair. I found it unusual to see 2 volatile organic chemicals showing up in all 3 of those mentioned food establishments. We're seeing acetone and tetrahydrofurane. THF is how they refer to it. And with that said, I do want to reach out to the labs to see if there might be some issues with it being erroneous or introduced, and to see if they used a blank trip sample to see if it's showing up in that sample as well. Because if it is, the possibility is it might not be in the water supply that is being tested. It may be in the lab or in wherever it was transported from, maybe in that airspace. So I do need to do a little further research on it, but I don't think it should hold up their permit. It just should be noted for the record.
Okay. And to note, the only of those that's on our agenda for tonight is Sherborn Fuel, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There were other items that were missing from Pine Hill and Heritage, so they weren't put on for tonight.
Okay.
If-
Rebecca, do you have a comment?
Yes, if we are going to allow the permit to go through without confirming that there are VOCs in the water at the Heritage, don't you think they should put a sign
the
up
Her-
or something?
The Heritage isn't on the agenda tonight.
No,
It's Sherborn
He
Fuel.
just said that the Heritage is one of
No.
the places where there might be VOCs.
Yes, and I just said that their permit is not on the agenda tonight, so we won't be approving it.
And I'm sorry to interject the other two. I just wanted to show the concern may be that it's introduced from another source, not from the actual water source. As relates to Sherborn Fuel, I wouldn't have a problem recommending it. The VOCs, we don't, when you drill a new well in town or you put a replacement, we have none detected, but we haven't set a standard yet for our food establishments. But again, it still deserves to be reviewed. I'd recommend conditional to the final review of the water testing results to see.
What does the state require for food establishments? Do you know?
They don't
offhand?
require testing. This is a local code that we set up.
Yeah, no, I was just curious what if you happen to know the state code for VOCs in
I don't
food
know the
establishments.
actual, but I
They,
can.
they don't require testing for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this it turns out to be more complicated than I anticipated, and I don't want to really get deep into the weeds on this, because we do have some other people waiting. So any other concerns, Tom, about any of these?
None other than those just mentioned. Just as a matter of information, Head Home is a residential kitchen that was previously named Healthy Buddha Treats, and they're changing their name to Head Home for this year's permit.
Okay. All right, so I think further discussion on those. I think I would like to hold off on voting just so we can have some more discussion. I just wanted Tom to be able to give his input, so we don't keep him waiting for the whole meeting. So I think we can come back and discuss those, if that's okay with everyone. And then I think the other
Yes.
thing we wanted to do early on was the Charles River Health District and Train MA. So we can also not
Except
keep
I
it here
think,
the whole meeting.
I do think that would be longer than potentially the discussion about 21 parks, but either way. And
okay, so
sorry,
then we
Carrie
could-
had mentioned that she was flexible if we wanted to take care of
Okay.
that.
All right, so then let's do 21 Ward Lane first.
Now I can interject if you so wish. The board
Sure.
had reviewed this at our last meeting. And the issue was the house is only a 3-bedroom septic system design flow, the septic design flow. And so the owners wanted to go back to the drawing board to redesign the house. The house showed 4 rooms above the first floor. They have since changed that, and the first floor count is up to the board, but I see it still as 4 rooms. But we're trying to get to 7 rooms total, and in the basement would need a deed recording, and so we can go through each one of those and see. But I was pleased to see that they made a master suite upstairs and reduced the study and put the study into a closet, as was discussed at our last meeting.
Okay, so this is the first floor, which is similar to what we saw before. The 4 rooms being a large kitchen, a dining room, a sunroom, and a living room, correct?
Yes.
The sunroom is conditioned, as I recall.
There was an office next to the fireplace on the top left.
Right.
That's been removed.
Yeah. Which I think it makes sense. It wasn't necessarily a separate space. And then the second floor, this is the prior plan, which we counted as 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, because anything on the second floor must be a bedroom. This is the new plan here. It's now generated a primary suite, and so it looks like access is via this doorway off the hall. So that counts as 1, 2, 3 to my mind. Does anyone have other comment on that?
I had same.
So that puts us at 7. And then we were going to deed record the finished space in the basement was the plan last time.
And I believe the storage is unfinished, if I'm not mistaken. I would ask that maybe the owners or the
Storage on the
architect.
right side is finished.
So we may have to consider a deed recording for more than that one room.
Yeah, and the finished space is the large one on the top right, and then the two small storage spaces and hallway. The mechanical room is the only unfinished space in the basement.
Okay, thank you. And it's a bulkhead, I presume, is what you're showing on the upper side.
That's a bulkhead.
Thank you. So the board may have to consider those other two additional rooms, the storage rooms.
How big are those storage areas?
I can get a measurement right now. Hold on a second. The top one is about 10 feet by 6.5. The bottom one is around the same size, 10 feet by 6.5.
Okay. And they appear to be windowless.
Yes.
I was going to suggest that be brought up.
They're effectively closets.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see it the same way. You need 70 square feet to have any use of a room, especially if you're using them for sleeping purposes. And you shouldn't be using these rooms for sleeping purposes since they're below grade.
And there's no egress for safety from the bedroom. I mean, other than the door to the hall, there's no second egress.
So maybe they don't need to be deed recording if they stay the same, just the larger room.
Okay. I would be okay with that.
I would too.
Right, and there's no bathroom planned, it looks like, for the basement. Is that correct?
There's no bathroom. I do see an error. There should be a door between the hallway and the finished space. We can revise that if you'd like.
Oh, okay.
Presumably right
Yep.
here.
Yeah.
That's fine. It doesn't change anything other than it makes logical sense. Okay, so I guess this looks fine to me now. I think these changes will bring it back into compliance, which is good, and allow them to go ahead with their addition. What do you need from us, Mark?
Thank you. I was going to suggest that the deed recording be completed. They can consult with Ellen. She has like a boilerplate for the deed recording, so you don't have to spend time and effort with maybe an attorney. And then once that's completed and submitted to our office and these plans are uploaded to the building application, then I'll be able to give the approval on the Board of Health end of it.
Sounds good, Mark. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So is the board going to vote that you would approve Mark to, you instruct Mark?
Yeah, we can do that.
State and conditional to the deed recording?
Yeah, that sounds good. So I would move that we authorize Mark to approve these plans once received, conditional to also receiving a deed recording for the basement room.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca?
You're muted,
Rebecca Honeywell
Rebecca.
abstain.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, so now I think we can move on to the Charles River Health District. So Carrie, do you want to give us an update, or Gerald, did you want to do an introduction?
Well, I think because we have a big lineup tonight of issues, did want to bring you up to the latest. This was an organizational diagram shared at the last meeting that the Charles River Health District had in late December, and it's still a work in progress to some degree, but it gives just a general sense of towns involved and how we're being coordinated through the staff who reside in Needham, and some of the objectives and plans for the group. there are still some of the major things that are still being worked on are intermunicipal agreement, but that is going to be largely in the hands of our town administrator and town council, along with the group, and MAHB has examples of forms of IMA agreements. So it's just working out some last details, and we can review it as well, but more for the technical than for the legal side, probably for the health technical. And so I don't know, Carrie, if you want to make so Carrie is guiding us through this and helping to coordinate among the towns and providing all sorts of administrative support for us on this. So I don't know if you'd like to say something.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board. My name is Carrie Donnell. I am the program manager for the Charles River Health District. I'm also the program manager for the training hub that is hosted through the Needham Health Department that's called the North Central and Metro West Training Hub. It serves Sherborn. It serves all the communities in the Charles River Health District. So I can speak to both the train issue and to Charles River. As Daryl said, this schematic was something that I developed to try and capture a lot of the information. This is there are a lot of moving pieces, as they say, to this organization, and it's new to folks. So the more that we can do to get everything on one page and let people ask questions and move conversation then to more substantive things and not get hung up in sort of who is which. So that was the purpose of it. There are a couple of small additions to be made basically to the work that are essentially duplicates of the gray. So I'll explain the work area. You see the two peach columns on each side. Those are the deliverables. Those were determined by the group as well as in the state based on data from the community assessment process and based on community expressed needs. So the key thing right now, we're talking about relevant technology and getting everyone licenses and trained for using Food Co Pro. That's been a big piece of our work. And as Daryl mentioned, the IMA is currently my focus. The intermunicipal agreement will replace the MOU that the communities signed on to in June of 2023. The IMA, so while an MOU is, as the lawyers will say, is not technically binding, an IMA it's under Chapter 44J of Mass General Law, and it is a means of determining quorum, determining who has the authority to vote, determining decision-making processes and the like. And Mass DPH has retained the services of Mass Association of Health Boards to develop a draft of an IMA. It is this same document is being shopped out to all communities that are participating in the shared services arrangements. We're up to, I think, about 312 of the 351. So as I used to say when I worked on public health mutual aid 20 years ago, it's not mutual if there's more than one agreement. So our task is to make sure that the agreement that this body, that the Charles River Health District signs on to is agreeable to all four communities. I ran through the agreement in detail with the advisory board in December with MAHB lawyers present for technical assistance. And our next step will be to take some of the feedback that came from the folks, and I will be moving it to Needham Town Council. They go first because Needham is the lead community for this particular arrangement. They'll review. Their job is to protect the interests of the town of Needham. Then it will be passed to the next community. Same thing. They'll be reviewing to protect the interests of the town of Sherborn and the like. Hopefully it moves smoothly. This is not a new agreement. There are a number of communities that have already signed into it. So hopefully we'll have it in force. I'm going to say maybe by the end of February. And that will be a big piece of work that then allows us to continue forward with doing some of the things of what are the needs, right? We know there are some needs for regional health inspection support, for public health nursing. And we've been doing some work trying to help support that. And we'd like to get into a further discussion of what are the things that these 4 communities can all benefit from, and how can we use the dollars to support that. Current award for Charles River Health District is $325,000 for FY24. We're awaiting contract amendment from the state before that amount is final, but they said it's in the mail. I think that's it. I'll just say I'll just say that, as Daryl said, so it's me, and then Sam Menard is the assistant director, and Sam is an experienced food inspector, or an experienced inspector works in both Brookline and in Newton, has more than 6 years experience, well-trained, and actually had trained many folks at both of those communities. And I am more of a generalist. I have worked on public health mutual aid. I've worked on emergency preparedness. I've developed all sorts of coalitions. I have managed training centers, and I've done a lot of work with local public health. So we make a nice team, and we are intent upon meeting all of you, becoming, as regular presence at your board meetings as you'd like us, and trying to figure out how can we help you move forward. Can we do data entry on the community, the capacity assessment? At this point, we're willing to do that, whatever we can do to move forward. We have that luxury right now because we're at the beginnings of this process, but I am glad to be here. I don't know if there's questions. I know you have lots of other business, but I'll follow your lead in terms of how you'd like to proceed with this.
Thank you, Carrie. I think for the time being, since the train issue is what we have to deal with next, I believe. I'd like you to explain a little bit about that. When I look at it, to me, it reads like it's not oriented towards board members. And so I'd like to understand that better, because everyone has day jobs and night jobs. Yep. And so what is that? How does it apply to the board, and how does it apply to the staff?
Okay. So Train MA is a learning management system. It's the place where trainings, online trainings will live, and it's also access sort of it would be like a teacher scorebook. You have rosters of people who are in the classes, you have scores on tests and the like. So Train is a tool. We'll be using it. I think y'all received emails that you had accounts created in your name, because there is an expectation that board members would take the foundations training that was offered by local public health institute for many years. And that is, it's an expectation. It's not a requirement. As you say, board members have day jobs. At the same time, the special commission, which is where all of this came through, deemed that it's very important that folks who are going to serve on a board of health have a solid understanding of what public health is beyond simply how it presents in the community in which they serve. So the foundations course it takes some time. Each of the online courses is about an hour. It's you can do it on your own time, 24/7 availability. And I think you have a year to take it, right? So, and no one's going to come looking for you, and funding is not tied to it at this point, right? I don't know if anyone has already taken the foundations course. I was part of the team that created foundations and some of the modules, so I'm a particular fan of them. I'd love to hear your feedback on them if there's anything we have wrong, especially. So that's for the board, right? And then for staff, there are different requirements. This all ties back to the release in October of 2023 by Mass Department of Public Health of performance standards for local public health. And there's a document that was delivered that indicates the expectations for each position. So they went through and identified what are all the different kinds of positions that might occur in any health department. And then what would the trainings be that you'd be required to take? And some are required, some are recommended. So right now, the Office of Local and Regional Health is preparing to release releasing something called MAFIT food. It's Massachusetts Public Health Intensive Training food. People have been waiting for this forever. It was, I was trying to unlock it from when I was managing the program in 2017. It's a huge victory that this training will be available. The way that training works is there's 3 half days of online training, and that's delivered by central trainers at the State Department of Public Health. And then once the trainees have completed that and completed all of their co-requisites, which is a lengthy list, it's 25 hours of co-requisites, then the MAFIT food training. So once they've completed that, then they're eligible for field training. And that is intensive on-site training with small groups, probably three people at a time, maybe 5. And then once someone has completed that, they're certified. So what we're doing is talking to all the different groups in our training hub with 39 communities, and talking like this and saying, okay, this is MAFIT food's coming up, and one person needs to be trained in it by the end of the year. But you do have some time. It doesn't, it's not going to only be offered in January. I think there's a lot of people that think this is it, they've got to get in before it disappears again. And the state has committed to offering, I think right now they're looking at least 1 session a month of this, recognizing that people are busy, that, that your inspectors are out doing inspection work for you and figuring out how to, organize the time so that they have time to do those co-requisites and then do the half days of training, means that not everyone's going to be ready to train in January or even February. And again, what'll happen is Train MA is the platform through which people will take the training. So Train MA is kind of like Zoom, but with more learning features. I'll stop there.
Did you have a comment? Just saw you had your hand up.
Yes, so let's see. I'm wondering how much either experience on the board, having attended years of MAHB conferences or whatever else, does this acknowledge that? Is this unconditionally in addition to? That'd be one question. The other is what you were just talking about regarding food. Does that program assume that you're talking about someone who does not yet have any credentials and experience with food inspections? I mean, is it a one size is going to fit everybody? Everybody's going to have to do 25 hours of training versus we have 2 food inspectors. We have one who's active, but Mark was also a food inspector who are doing the job, have been doing the job for quite some time. So, and you don't have to explain all the details, but is there a place where people can go and it defines who needs what training, who needs it? And then we have to figure out timing and staff time allocation. So for that, I don't know if that's an easy thing to point us to or not so easy.
Very easy. So I'll send out a link to the performance standards and the requirements that can include that in a message, and that it's available on the state website, and it runs through each position and it identifies the requirements. And then the other question
Perfect.
about
Thank
whether
you.
there's any grandfathering or waiver opportunities, the answer is no. There are people all over the state who have been doing the job for, as has Mark and as have others, and everyone needs to be trained in the same. That's one of the goals of this, is to not do FDA standardization level, but to have standard training, much like other municipal staff. I'd equate us to our public safety and our fire colleagues and others, DPW, there are standard trainings that people have to have in order to perform a function. And that is one of the requirements for this. It doesn't make everybody happy, but
No, I understand the intent.
Yep.
But it's they're not paying us enough sometimes for how much we need to do, but that's the way it goes. It's the way Massachusetts is.
So, so this is, I guess, the good news then, is that this is part of the thing that we can discuss with the advisory board for Charles River Health District, in terms of, are there available dollars that could support payment of a little bit of extra time for training? I don't know the answer to that, but it is something that we can consider. And there are things that the training hub will be doing to try and help coordinate folks in getting their co-requisites. We'll sit down, and do some timelining with folks. We'll offer cohort study groups if people want to do that. We're here to do whatever we can to make it easier. We can't make the hours less, but we'll do whatever we can to guide people through and help coordinate it, recognizing that there's work that needs to be done.
I think that would definitely help incentivize things. There's sort of nothing worse than an unfunded mandate, right? And it's a lot of hours to ask people to do when they already don't have enough hours in the day. So I think that would probably make a big difference for compliance.
Yep. Sorry, just making some notes. Yes. Okay. Any other questions? This was a whirlwind tour. As I told Daryl that there's more, and I hope that I could be invited back to, to another meeting when y'all have a little bit less hectic agenda, and we can have a conversation, and I'll try and answer whatever questions you have about both the training hub and about Charles River Health District. And as I said, we're going to make sure that there's someone, present, aware of the agenda, and kind of attentive to needs, so that we can be responsive going forward.
That's great. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Very nice to meet you all.
Yeah. And so, after the meetings that we have, it's added to our agenda so that I can relay back a summary of what the group is working on.
Right. And what we'll start doing, Daryl, is you'll start receiving the minutes that can get included in the packet if you wish. And then there'll be a monthly report that we produced of what the shared services activities are, that'll be distributed to all the communities as well, so that there's some good visibility into what's happening with staff and with the funds.
That sounds good. And just so that our board knows, the MAHB has also extended an offer of assistance to individual towns too, if we have questions about.
Yes.
At the moment, about the IMA is the big thing to tackle next, but in general, they've been very gracious about offering support.
Yes, we're really fortunate to have, it was an excellent program planning decision by Office of Local and Regional Health to get a contract with MAHB to cover this, because there are a lot of questions among communities, and I'll have them come to our meetings, but yes, they're available for you all as well. And I can bring them with me for one of those meetings that you're going to invite me back to. We have a nice balanced show to do.
Okay, and I was remiss in not saying Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, so that's MAHB for others in the meeting. Okay, great.
Great. Thank you again. Very nice to meet you all. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with Daryl and other communities, and I look forward to helping support y'all going forward. Have a
Okay,
great night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, I think the next item to address will be the Greenwood Homes 40B. This is been on the agenda last couple of nights, reviewing the Title V septic application. If it's all right, I maybe just want to sort of frame where I see the discussion, and then would like sort of input from others on where they feel we're at. So we have before us, and Mark has spent time reviewing plans for the 4 septic systems at the 4 lots. Sent a letter out after the initial review. We got some responses after that, and then he's been able to sort of, there were edits to the plans, he was able to re-review, and so now we're looking at them now. I see there's a hand raise. Is there a question?
That's just Deshang. He wanted to let you know that he's here.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
Thanks, Deshang. All right, so lost my train of thought. So we discussed previously, we had some questions sort of about process here, and I sort of wanted to clarify my understanding of things after we also spoke with council. I think there were, it's a little different than our usual process, in that the ZBA is ultimately the decider on many of these issues that traditionally we sort of handle on our own, largely in relation to well. And so we have, since the last 40B, codified in our regulations the sort of requirements we have for reviewing something. And one of the things we codified was sort of receiving sort of the well input at the same time. And so we were able to clarify, and at least my understanding of the clarification we received is that we don't need the well, we cannot actually require the well permanent fee in this context of a 40B. And so I think we don't need that. We do need to see that the wells meet the Title V requirements in order to approve Title V. And I think we are welcome as a board to comment on, where we feel that they should meet any additional Sherborn regulations, because we want to provide that feedback to the ZBA. But we don't need those things to be in compliance to sort of say, yes, these plans are compliant with Title V. And so I think that's one issue that I think, at least in my mind, is cleared up, and I think we can discuss. I think another issue that has come up was this discussion of the boundaries as depicted on the plans. And I think this largely came up because the initial plan noted that they were sort of estimates. And I think that there were sort of a couple issues that we got clarification on here. One is that Deshang provided a response here on sort of how they established the base plan, which I think would meet sort of the standards for what we usually see for plans. There is some issue of sequencing here in my mind, in that until the sort of ZBA approves everything, they can't have the exact internal lot lines defined. And so they've provided what they can, but until the A&R is defined, they're not defined. And so I think that's also fair. I think really the concern arose because we saw a plan that said these are estimated, then we saw another plan with the same lines that just didn't say anything. But in my mind, the response here provides some clarification to that. And so I think that's another thing we can discuss. And it could well be that we say, yes, this meets Title V, but we'll need an as-built once the final lot lines are determined. And I think that's an approach we can take. Trying to think, I feel like there was another issue I wanted to comment on here. Let me skip to the end here and see. Concom would be the last thing, is that typically we also require Concom prior to review, as that's something else we codified. But that's also something else that I think, cannot place ahead of sort of just reviewing these for compliance with Title V. We could, however, say that, if there are Concom issues that come up that cause change to the plan, we reserve the right to sort of review them again. But we don't need Concom approval before saying this meets Title V. And And so I think that's sort of where I'm at with this. And I'll want to hear sort of other thoughts from the board and input from Mark. But I think the main things are the question of what we can't say about well at this point, and to some degree those could be separated into meets Title V, but we have Sherborn concerns that the ZBA should consider, the legal boundary question, and then the Concom question. Those are sort of the big three in my mind. And then I'll hand it over to others for comment. I see Rebecca's hands up now.
Can you repeat what you said that we do? You were speaking very quickly. I couldn't hear what you said at the very beginning about the wells and whether or not the Board of Health should be sure that there's a drinking water supply.
Yeah, so our current codified process is to say that we need an application for a well permit at the same time as a septic permit. That had been our practice for years, but it wasn't technically in our regulations until the last round of review. And so when we initially reviewed these plans, we said, hey, we require a well permit. And so we went to council and said, you know, our typical process would be this. How does that change in the context of a 40B? And the input we got back from council, to my understanding of it, is that ultimately the ZBA will be the decider on that. And so we can provide input to the ZBA on our sort of thoughts on the wells, but that we should continue to evaluate these plans for compliance with Title V. And so these plans show wells, and they show, you know, their location and whether that would be compliant with Title V. But to my understanding, we cannot require the well application at the time we review these for Title V, nor can we sort of deny their compliance based on Sherborn regs. We can, however, comment to ZBA saying that, hey, we really would like to see them comply with Sherborn regs. Does that make sense, Daryl? So there's sort of a two-step thing. There's like, do we say, hey, these plans are Title V compliant septic plans that we agree are Title V compliant? And then step two is, but there are additional Sherborn regs that we would like the ZBA to consider.
Yes, I agree with that.
Does that answer your question, Rebecca?
Sort of. Because we know that Title V requires potable drinking water.
No, Title V has to deal only with septic.
Well, Chapter 40B developments require potable drinking water, and in the absence of a public water supply bringing water in from somewhere else, we have to be sure that the drinking water can be safe. And unfortunately, that's the Board of Health has to be able to comment before a permit is given for that. We can't
and so
bypass drinking water.
Right. And so these plans show the location of wells. And so the question before us right now is, are those locations compliant with Title V? And so we can answer that question. If we have additional regulations beyond that, we can advise to ZBA that we would like compliance with those, but that doesn't impact on whether we say these are compliant with Title V. Does that make sense? I can pull up an example.
I'll also mention that the reason we had the procedures have for decades, the procedures of looking at well and septic together, is because it streamlines the process overall. So it was a practicality matter in town to be looking at whether everything was going to work together. And from the housing perspective, it's most important for housing to first establish whether there is potable water supplied, whether it's from a municipal system or from a private well. So that is the reason that the Board of Health, or one of the reasons that the Board of Health adopted its process that, as Matt pointed out,
and so I think
side. So,
and I think that really the only difference here, I think we are considering the location of the well, because the location of the wells, I've shown an example here for lot 1. The locations are shown on these plans of where the proposed well is. I think the only difference from our process is that we're not applying the Sherborn specific regulations, and we're not collecting the fee for a permit. But otherwise, we're considering the location of the well on the plan as we consider the compliance of the septic system.
And what that means, I think, for practical purposes under these circumstances, is that we just need to acknowledge that should information change, should the location of anything change, that we would need to re-review things to find out whether we could still stand by whatever recommendations we choose to make this evening, or related ZBA, whether it's a evening or after this.
At what
So it's a
does
little
the
more
board-
at risk for the person making the proposal than our normal process.
Daryl, you're breaking up a little bit for me. I don't know if others are getting that as well. And then I see that Rebecca
I
had
haven't been
Rebecca's
speaking
hands now down,
for-
Julie's hand.
No, I have a question. I have a question. So I'd like to come back when you're done with the next.
Okay. So Julie, do you want to go?
Okay, I think I've lowered my hand finally. But I just want to clarify, Matt, we are reviewing the wells as well as the septics tonight.
So we're only reviewing the well to understand that the well is sited such that is compliant with Title V setbacks from the septic.
Okay, so then within the deficiencies letter and then the responses regarding the septics, we are not going to address those tonight, only the wells.
No, I'm confused now.
I'm sorry.
I think the goal tonight, is to say, is this septic plan compliant with Title V?
Okay, so the septics as well as the wells is what we're going
Yes.
to be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, the wells in relation to that's Title V is just about septic. But part of that rule is to say, where is the well in relation to the septic? Or rather, where is the septic in relation to the well? Because it's about the septic system. But we're not issuing a well permit at this point, because that's ultimately will be a ZBA issue in the final determination on the wells. What we're doing tonight is saying, are these septic locations compliant with Title V? And part of that is understanding the setback from the proposed well.
So my simplified version of that is we are giving comments to the ZBA. We are giving them the green highlighter and stuff that's great, the yellow highlighter and stuff that we're not sure about and have questions, and the red highlighter and anything that we have strong concerns about. Is that a good summary?
Yes. I think another way to put it is that there's sort of two pieces. One is one that we have to say is we have to vote to say these plans are, after our review, compliant with Title V. So that's sort of the one piece that we have to do. That's like what is our job. Oh, sorry, I apparently have AI gestures on. The other day, balloons appeared in the middle of a serious meeting, and I don't understand how I made it happen. That doesn't go well in my line of work. So anyway, so that's one. And then two is, anytime we meet as a board, this is our opportunity to discuss any concerns we have about the wells. But ultimately, the ZBA is the decider about the wells. We're the decider about, is this a Title V compliant septic system?
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask?
Rebecca.
Okay, thanks. At what point do we recommend to ZBA that a specialist be hired by the town to comment because the complexity is high? It would be extremely unfortunate for the developer if they have to redo something later. It'd be very costly. They put a lot of time and energy into this. It would help them if some of this is cleared up in advance. I'm wondering when does the Board of Health recommend that a third party who specializes in this, has a lot of time, more than volunteer members of a board with day jobs, to comment on ways that this project could meet Title V, so that the drinking water is safe and we don't have to later go back and try to undo work that Mr. Murchison and his team have completed.
Sure. So I think, for this particular project, which is sort of 4 individual homes, I think it's sort of within our ability to say, is this compliant with Title V? And I think it's not only our ability, it's our responsibility to make that determination. I think when it comes to sort of further details on Sherborn regulations on the wells, we can do that at a ZBA meeting in which this is discussed. And so that's our opportunity to provide input, not typically as a full board, but as a representative of the board could be there and provide that input to the ZBA when they're discussing this. And I don't off the top of my head know when their meeting is, but I know it's soon.
So you don't think that we would benefit from having a third party?
I didn't say that. Your question was, when do we make the recommendation? And my answer was the recommendation would be made to them at their meeting. but it is ultimately the responsibility of this board to decide if this is a Title V compliant system. And ultimately, that's our responsibility all the time, right? Like that's what we do constantly is we review septic plans and we say, with the dramatic assistance of Mark, we say, yeah, we think this meets the rules.
Well, I know that there was that landmark case in Carlisle where a fully permitted project was, taken, the permits were completely removed at the state level because one well was going to be contaminated. And it seems like that wastes a lot of time and energy for the developer who's trying to do a project in good faith, hopefully. And I was thinking because we have a complicated situation in Sherborn, it might be beneficial due to some of the other situations that have come up in the past to examine if this is going to be able to meet Title V.
So I think one thing that might be useful here is maybe hand this over to Mark, because ultimately it is his job to sort of review this against Title V, and say whether there are concerns. I think that, for the next 40B we're discussing, that certainly is more complex than most things we see. I think for this one, it isn't fundamentally more complex than a night in which we had 4 septic system reviews on our agenda. And so Mark, maybe if unless there's other comment from the board first, Mark, I would like to hear from you on your sort of thoughts on any remaining issues.
If you can go back to the response letter from the engineer. And I'll bring out a couple points that were mentioned in it. If you go down,
would you like me to go?
Thank you. If you go down to the bottom of this page, number 5, right about in the center, it says, furthermore, the exact lot lines to a fraction of an inch will be not set until the A&R is approved by the ZBA in the comprehensive permit process. I think that should be noted if the board's planning to approve the plans, that, that would be like a condition that we have to wait for that final. If that changes the plan, then obviously it's back to the drawing board. But I think that should be noted if the board so wishes to approve the plan. Then at the very end with the notes.
I'll just to comment on that. I think that makes perfect sense. I think that would just be a highlight to pull out. We understand that like you can't do both things first, and so that would be an opportunity for us to sort of acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think that would make good sense for everyone. And then in the note section, let me see. I noted under A that could be another note, because the plans could change if the wetland delineations change, so that the plan is being approved, but the board reserves the right to require new plans if the wetland delineations change, because that could obviously change the septic plan. And I understand we have to wait for that, but I think that could be noted as well. And then there was discussion under section C, the garbage grinders. Normally, a plan is not approved until the deed recording is completed. They are asking that it be issued, and that only at the time of the certificate of occupancy. That could create an issue if indeed there's one put in and we don't have the deed recording yet. It's usually best to do that prior to the plan release. That's the way the board has done it. But again, this is not mentioned in Title V nor in anything else in our regulations. But I think that could create an issue if the plan is to be approved. Maybe a note that the deed recording is to be completed prior to installation. I mean, that's up to the board. And with the well's already been discussed, and I think that's appropriate again to just note the well, that this one is only for a septic system approval per Title V requirements, and that the well will need to be applied for, a permit received, and whatever you decide to utilize, may it be our regulations, the Board of Health regulations, or the DEP recommendations. They only have guidelines. They do not have regulations. But if it's decided that the board wishes to go with the guidelines, then you should note that they are to be utilized as if they were a regulation. And those are my comments. Oh, one other, same page. At the bottom, it talks about G. It talks about the floor plans for the house. I did ask for those plans, but it noted The homes will be deed restricted to 4 bedrooms, eliminating any room count concerns. I would ask maybe if the applicant could address that. In Title V, you're allowed up to 9 rooms for a 4-bedroom house. Was there any consideration for deed recordings that would allow additional rooms? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's helpful. And so I think for me, for the garbage grinder, I think this is another instance of like, it's what we would typically do and it's what we would prefer. But if it's not strictly required by Title V, then I think we can't do that here. For the rooms, I would be happy to hear comments from the developer or the engineer on sort of plans for the room number, which would be useful. But that's it for me. Daryl, you want to go ahead?
I'm not so sure that we can't comment on the
Yes.
garbage grinder deed restriction. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We can make a suggestion, and I mean, I would be in favor of making a suggestion that the timing of the deed restriction be shifted ahead in the process, because right, it can be hard to catch issues later on, or decisions might be made along the way where, you know, somehow there's the focus on this issue is lost. And it's not, we have people doing deed recordings all the time. It's not that complex a thing to address.
No, I think
So
that's fair. I
just
think
for
I would probably
consideration,
agree.
I don't think we're giving up our ability to say, to limit ourselves entirely to Title V if we think that it's in the interest of the project.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there are probably a number of things we could suggest to ZBA, and that's one of them, is to suggest that the deed restrictions be received prior to issuance of sort of things being released for construction. But I think ultimately the ZBA would be the deciders on that too. Other comments from the board?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I'm going to raise my hand faster in real life.
That's fine.
Okay. So there were within, I'm sorry, this is a big bolus, so I had to break it down in my brain by lots, going through Mark's letter. So Mark, there were, in a couple of the different lots, there were some discrepancies in terms of the recordings for the holes, the deep holes. Was that resolved, or should we go through them individually? Because I tried to reconcile them with the most current version of the plans and saw a few discrepancies.
It actually was a discrepancy on if the soil type was to be utilized for the more restrictive soil as sandy loam, and the applicant and engineer did resolve that issue. They resubmitted plans using the design flow factor that would be for the more conservative soil type that was found, that being the sandy loam versus the loomy sand. So that has been, I should have noted that the other items on this list have been resolved. But I'm sorry, I didn't note that at the beginning. They have responded with two, depending on what lot, two revised plans, and have resolved the rest of the issues noted here. The ones I mentioned were the ones that were pending.
Okay, that is very helpful, and that saved me a lot of talking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So just to sort of summarize it, Mark, then at this point, would you recommend sort of approval of these plans as compliant with Title V?
With those noted conditions.
Okay.
But yes, I would.
Hand.
Diana, go ahead.
Yes, could we just, for my brain here, could we clarify the conditions we're proposing to the ZBA has to do with the garbage grinder on the deed and a total room count for the 4 bedrooms? I mean, for the houses, for the 4-bedroom houses.
Sure. So I think there are sort of, again, maybe a couple levels here. Level 1 is that we would approve these as compliant with Title V
Yes.
sort of conditional to no substantive changes to the final lot lines once the ZBA approves them,
Yep.
and conditional to sort of no changes in wetland delineations once Concom has reviewed them. So I think that's the sort of plan approval piece.
Yep.
The second piece, I think, is that we would make further suggestions to the ZBA in their consideration that they request the garbage grinder deed restrictions prior to releasing plans for construction, and that there be further discussion on application of some Sherborn-specific regulations to the wells. Those two being sort of the suggestions we would make to ZBA. Does that make sense? At least
Yes.
that's how I was imagining
Yes.
it. I'm
That
open to
summarizes it. Right.
Okay. And then I think there's the question about the room count, which I think we do want to sort of hear from you guys just in general. But I also see Desheng's hand is up. So unless there's more comment for the board first, I'd like to give Desheng a chance to speak. Go ahead, Desheng.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mark. I agree with everything, and I think just one thing to note is the wetlands. The wetland is confirmed through an ORAD, so therefore the wetlands is not going to be an issue. So it will be some kind of a minor permitting for grading and installation of wells, which is not. I don't see any changes to the wetland line. So as far as I know, that's just for your information, and you can consider that in your decision.
I think, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's sort of good to know that that's been looked at. I think ultimately we still have to say that if Concom says you have to change something that would affect us, we still want to look at it again, but that's reasonable.
Sure.
Anything else from anyone?
Actually, Mark, we'll get to the wells in a moment and how that fits in. Well, we're just doing Title V at the moment, but I think that does cross over into consideration of what features of these systems are varying from the local regulations. And again, the reason that when we have those regulations, we have had them, or Sherborn, I shouldn't say we, Sherborn has had the regulations it has because it's empowered and frankly given the responsibility to take state level regulations and then, which are a minimum, and then look at what are the needs of a community, the special needs of a community and special circumstances of a community, and therefore to protect public health accordingly. So I think I'd just like to acknowledge which things are variances from what our regulations are. And I believe depth to groundwater from the SAS is one. The well distances are going to be another, and some setback from property lines of wells. So I don't know if they're, oh, but that's a well. All right, we're putting that off to the side. So never mind on that one. But I don't know if there's really anything else that is a significant change from what our regulations require.
If I can add, Daryl, that's a good summary, and it should be noted that the Title V changes in 1995 became more conforming to what we required at the local level. One of our past board members was helpful in getting the state regulations to meet some of the requirements we had at the local level. With that said, there is the depth to groundwater is being met per our regulations on the lots where depth to groundwater was set at 5 feet based on the perk rate. And that's a Title V requirement, but in our requirements, the local regulations, we say that all soil absorption systems the base of it shall be 5 feet from groundwater. And that's one case that, I think it's lot one that, or one of those lots does have 5 feet to groundwater, or there's one that has 4 and there's few, I'd have to look, but that is recognized as not meeting our regulations if it's less than 5 feet to groundwater.
And then the other issue, Mark, was was septic setbacks from property lines, or is that resolve?
I actually haven't reviewed that, but we do require 25 feet, and I believe there may be a couple of the plans where those would not be met. Deishang, if you have I have the plans in front of me, I can open them. But that might be another issue, is the distance of the soil absorption system to a property line.
I believe we are compliant, Mark, with those. But Deishang may answer better.
Yeah, the groundwater depths, I think only lot 2 have a 4 foot, all others have a 5 foot. And the setbacks from septic fields to the property line all in compliance with local.
Mhm.
And the well, again, so we're not talking about well, but yeah, most of the wells also have adequate setback from wells to septic. It's 125, so under our per grade. So and a couple of them is a little bit less. So the minimum one, I believe, is 108. So I'm using my cell phone right now. Cannot access my file due to.
Actually, I just opened up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Deishang. You can finish if you want.
No. If you can open the plans, probably.
Yeah, I opened up lot 1, and lot 1, you're 23.93, so you're about a foot off from the property line, from what our requirements would say. So I'm opening. Lot 2.
We are 20. We are 20
Lot 2.
feet.
Yeah, we require 25 feet, I believe.
So
20.
so there are
No.
Oh,
20.
that's right, Deishang. You're Deishang's correct. We're 25 feet from property line for the well.
Well,
and
right.
We're 20 feet from the property line for a septic system. Thank you for that correction, Deishang.
and I may have said that. I may have also said that wrong, which is confusing people. So I'm sorry if I conflated those two. Okay, I think Rebecca had her hand up for a while, so I want to go to Rebecca.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that there's only one affordable house coming here, and there are 3 market value. All will be private wells, even though it's under Chapter 40B. And I believe we had state guidance that in the absence of public water supply, eventually it's going to come back to the local board regs for the drinking water well, even after even though ZBA is the granting authority. My concern is how we can protect the quality of the drinking water in not just the affordable unit, because I know that at the state level, they want affordable housing to have safe drinking water, but also in the market value units, because even if it's the ZBA making a determination on a 40B, the Board of Health has a responsibility to be sure that the drinking water is going to be potable. We don't want to put the developer into a situation where it's excessively expensive to make corrections. And I think that it might make sense for us as a board to recommend to the ZBA that prior to their hearing, that an expert assess whether or not this is going to meet all of the state requirements for Chapter 40B, to be able to be sure that we're going to have safe drinking water for these 4 houses in the future. So
I will say that I think that, again, 2 steps. I think one is we discussed the septics and whether they're compliant with Title V. And so I'll kind of propose a vote on that in a moment. I think 2, I think we can suggest to the ZBA that they consider our local regulations with regard to wells when deciding how to move forward on this project. I'm not sure what expert we're asking for in this situation. Other than to say, we feel our regulations are important, we would like to meet them. We have measurements that are different from our measurements, and we think that's for a reason, but I'm not sure exactly what expert we're asking for here. I think we can determine whether this is compliant with local regulations.
Yeah, maybe Daryl knows the answer to this. I know that in my very first term on the Board of Health, the town hired a consultant to evaluate these issues. There was a group on a 40B project. The town had their own specialist who reported to us their findings. And
Re-
then-
Rebecca,
Yeah.
can I help you here? The town has hired a peer reviewer. It's called Tetra Tech. And Tetra Tech has reviewed the plans for Greenwood Homes. And they've made comments on them, and we've responded to them, and all of that is going on through the ZBA process. So you're absolutely right. The town should have a peer reviewer for a 40B project, and they have one. They have a peer reviewer for both Greenwood Homes and for Farm Road Homes, and that's an ongoing process. But the peer reviewer has even reviewed our Title V application, our Title V septic system design that you're going to vote on hopefully here in a couple of minutes. And actually, they didn't have any comments on that. They had comments on other aspects of the Greenwood Homes project, but not on the Title V. So you're absolutely right. The town should have a peer reviewer, and they do have a peer reviewer.
Thanks. Do we have a copy of that in our packet?
I don't control
I'm
your.
asking
but
our agent or
it's all
Ella.
posted.
Rebecca, it's
Carol.
posted on the
Posted on
town
the town
website
website. Yeah.
under land development.
Yeah.
So it's
Greenwood
not, but
Homes.
we didn't receive it as the Board of Health.
No, but it's all posted there.
And I think it also, sorry, Rebecca, I thought you were asking for something beyond that. I think I was confused. I apologize.
Well, I hadn't seen that, and so I was that's the reason for my question.
Okay. No, and I'm sorry, I think I misinterpreted.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think I would like to oh, Julie, go ahead.
I was going to just respectfully ask Matt if we should see if there are any abutters who have questions and who are attending.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Are there any abutters to the Greenwood Homes project present?
While we're waiting for somebody to potentially raise their hand, I will just note, I looked at the 4 plans and it looks like it's only lot 2 that has less than 5 feet to high groundwater. The others are at about 5 and just over 5. So I thought there were 2, but that's because there were 2 different number values on the lot 2. I had remembered the 4.05 and 4.1, but there might have been some rounding on that second page of the plans. So for lot 2. So there were 2 numbers on the plan, but they're essentially the same with rounding.
Was that on here, Daryl? Unfortunately, the screen with my camera on it is tiny and I cannot read anything on here.
It is, if you go to the top of the page.
Oh,
there you go.
Straight down from where your arrow is now is a line that shows the
Oh, there it is. Yep, got it.
In the
Sorry,
top,
it is so small on my screen I can't see anything.
the top, go yeah, it's tiny. It's
Yeah, so here it is. Here's the depth of groundwater here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that's good.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to go in 2 steps. And first I would like to suggest a motion that we approve these 4 septic plans as compliant with Title V as presented, reserving the right to review should there be changes in the lot lines or any determination from Concom that would substantively change the plan.
I think I would.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
oops.
Open to comment. Go ahead, Daryl.
I was going to say, I think rather than approve, since we are not the approving body,
Yeah.
we are the recommending body. I think I'd rather vote on recommending or advising. In this case, advising.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you are the approving body under Title V for a title.
Eventually we will be,
No,
but
you
at this moment.
You are right now the approving body for Title V. That is your role here. You're absolutely approving body. That's the law.
That's my understanding as well, is that we are approving these as compliant with Title V.
Except if we approve it and we have recommendations for something different to ZBA, my understanding was that, and what has happened in the past, is that it would go through the comprehensive permit development, and depending on how that came out, then whatever came out of that process would come back to us for approval.
No, so the way this works is you are the approving body for the Title V application and permit, and any conditions that you would like to see put on the project relative to septic, to wells, to anything really within your purview, you have the absolute right to ask that those conditions be put on the project. And then those conditions will be a part of the comprehensive permit. In other words, if the ZBA so decides, then they put that condition that you want put on our project. If the ZBA agrees and they put that condition on the project, then I'm obligated to comply with that condition. Or if I don't, then I have to go to Housing Appeals Court and fight the conditions. But the conditions are not put on Title V. It's just an up or down vote on Title V compliance, as I think, Matt, you're,
Yeah, I think what I was trying to suggest is that we have a vote on Title V compliance, and we vote to approve the plans as compliant with Title V, and then a separate vote on any recommendations we want to make to ZBA regarding local regulations.
And I understand that explanation, but in terms of, I guess I would want to hear from our town council to verify that us approving the Title V plans, can that somehow become disconnected from any recommendations that we make that are later accepted by the ZBA, but there is an approved plan that is merely Title V compliant? I'm not saying we're going to necessarily have something else that we want to add. I'm just saying it seems to close the door on a smoother process for including that later on.
I mean, Daryl, I don't make the process. The process is as I've described it and as Matt has described it. You are required by law to vote up or down on the Title V application. And then you are allowed to ask for any conditions based on, those conditions that you ask for need to be based in your local regulations. You can't just ask for anything you want. It has to be in your local regulations, and you want us to comply with that. You ask ZBA to put those conditions into the comprehensive permit. As a practical matter, I could never build the Title V septic system unless I get the comprehensive permit, right?
I mean, that's my understanding of it, is that that's the next check, is the issuance of the comprehensive permit.
Right. And it's the big check. Without that, I have nothing, because I can't build a septic system under Title V without a comprehensive permit. If I'm denied a comprehensive permit and I wanted to build something on the property, I can't use the Title V application because I have to follow your local regulations, and I need a local permit from you for the septic if I don't get my comprehensive permit.
Yes, and the way that was done for the fields is it came at the end.
Right.
My recollection of how that worked. So
you're absolutely right, Daryl, that the Title V application process can come before I apply for a comprehensive permit. It can come, as in this case, during, or I could wait and apply afterwards. I chose to apply during because, frankly, I want the ZBA to look at my septic plans and take into consideration your request. That's a fair thing to do. If I waited till after, then the ZBA couldn't look at your local regulations because I wouldn't have given them the septic plan. In this case, I've done it so that it can get the double review, one under local by ZBA, and then yours under Title V. but you have an obligation to take action on this Title V application.
Jeremy, are you able to confirm this aspect of the process? Not to put you on the spot.
I see Jeremy's here, but he's still on mute.
I don't disagree that there's another gate to be had on this. That being the comprehensive permit issued by ZBA. All right, you could continue.
Okay, so I think I would make a motion that these 4 plans, I would suggest a motion that we approve these 4 plans as compliant with Title V. Conditional to, in this case, there being no substantive change in the final lot lines or review by Concom. And I call those things, I set aside to call those things out because those could potentially change Title V compliance. And so obviously if things move, we need to look at it again, but as presented, assuming none of those things move, that we say these are Title V compliant. Is anyone willing to make that motion?
I think I am, but I just want to, oh shoot, I wish there was a rewind button. I just wanted to hear again what you said about Concom to make sure it was worded correctly.
Sure. So I would recommend a motion that we approve these plans for the 4 lots as compliant with Title V, conditional to the opportunity to re-review should lot lines change after ZBA review, or should there be any change to wetlands or other conditions following Concom review.
So moved.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any more discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, nay.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so having done that, I think I would entertain whether there's discussion on any specific recommendations, suggestions we'd like to make to the ZBA, particularly with regards to well siting, as I think that's probably the largest place where this may vary from local regs. And I'm going to hand it to somebody else so I can drink something.
Okay.
Before you have that discussion, could I make just a quick comment on the wells, so that informs your discussion? So the wells are sited on these lots. We maximized and kind of what I'll call optimized the distance between the wells and the septic systems. And there are a couple of them, several of them are compliant. I believe 2 of them miss the local regulations by a small number of feet. So but the real point I'm trying to make is we don't have the ability to fix those misses. In other words, that makes the project not buildable. And so I think if you were to kind of make a recommendation, for example, let's say we're at 138 feet. I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say we're at 138 feet and you say to the ZBA, gee, we want to see that at 150. Well, as a practical matter, the ZBA will have to deny the comprehensive permit based on if they were to say yes to your condition. And that's a pretty heavy thing. I just want you all to know that we did everything we could to maximize the distances between water and sewer. Thank you.
Bob,
Thanks,
could you
Bob.
explain what determined the size and configuration of the lots, which then has bearing on well placement options.
The lots were determined by the requirements of Title V, as you know.
So
Which
does
is
anyone
not a
have,
requirement, but
sorry, go ahead, Gerald.
no, I just said, but that's not a requirement for establishing a lot.
Well, we needed the amount of acreage, as you know, for the to be in compliance with Title V. You know, what I call septic density. You know, nitrogen loading, I think, is the more technical term. But that's what determined the size of the lots.
Oh, do you mean that that acreage was needed for the other project?
No. Well, yes, obviously, they're in combination with each other. Yes. But the lots here in front of you have long ago been determined. There's no changing those at this point. Those are locked in.
These 4 lots, but I thought that the lines had not yet been formally established under A&R.
Right, but all of the engineering on all of the homes, both not part of this project and not part of this project, are based on the lot lines that are drawn. That's not something we can go backwards on at this point.
Right, so Daryl is probably thinking we say has not determined is we haven't fulfilled that process, but technically the lines are all official, not official, it's technically sound and fixed, but it just have to go through that A&R process, recording with the, you know, plan. It's not like we don't even know, it's like fluffy. No, this is very accurate lines. So in that sense, it's just that haven't gone through the process. So that's a 2 different things.
Yep. Thank you, Dishing.
Welcome.
So is there any suggestion that anyone would like to propose we make to ZBA?
Well, I feel like we're being locked in by a choice made on size and shape of lots. And maybe there is no flexibility on that.
I mean, we
But
could sort
seems
of vaguely,
odd.
I mean, we could suggest that ZBA consider local well regulations in deciding their overall, you know, consideration of this project. It allows for discussion. It highlights to them that we have concerns about building at greater density, but it doesn't sort of put them in a position that says, you know, we can't make a decision that we feel the benefit outweigh the risk here.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca?
You just summarized what I said. I mean, I think unfortunately, even if it's only a couple feet, the regs are sort of the bare minimum, and it puts people in positions of liability and losing and risk of their own public health, all the future residents. And, you know, there's no going back. So if it doesn't meet the regs, even if it's only for a few feet, then maybe it's just not a good project. I hate to say it.
And that's a decision ZBA could make, you know,
Right.
and I think that
that's why
that's
I'm
fair.
saying that I think that, you know, it's not like we're putting in, you know, 20 affordable units that are going to be safe, and we know the drinking water is great, and we're going to have 2 positive endpoints where we have safe drinking water and we have lots of affordable housing that's going to help us with our state requirements. We're not doing either here.
Other comments from the board?
No, I like your suggestion, Matt.
If I can suggest too, the board may want to break down not just the distances, but the actual quality and quantity testing, which right now there's only guidelines at the state level, and at our level we require quality and quantity testing. I would ask that that be also recognized in respect to our well regulations.
And so maybe a way to phrase that is that we suggest the ZBA consider all local well regulations, including setbacks. I mean, I almost don't want to like list, but like the ZBA consider all local well regulations and whether those can be, and whether variances from those regulations are, sorry, I'm writing on the fly. Let me start over. So we could suggest that the ZBA consider whether the benefits of those projects outweigh the risks of requiring variance from all local well regulations. Any and all. Better way to say that. Because I know that they aren't, so there are variances from all of our regs, but how would people feel about something like that? Too vague?
If what you're saying is said coming at it from the opposite direction, is that we would like our well regulations to be applied to the maximum extent possible.
That's a better way to say it.
Yes, I'm more comfortable with that.
It's a much better way
Because
to say it.
they are the only regulations
Yeah.
developed under the authority given to local boards of health to develop well regulations. So resorting to guidelines doesn't feel adequate, nor does it feel like we would be treating the health protections for this project in a manner equal to what's done elsewhere in town.
Yeah, I like that way of phrasing it. Julie?
I kind of love this AI with the hand thing. It's really convenient. So I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, recognizing our regulations were officially changed within the last 2 or 3 months, whatever month we're in now. This project, particularly in terms of the quality with the additional testing of PFAS at the establishment of a well, is probably one of the biggest differences. Is this project, because it was submitted for eligibility prior to that change, not subject to our updated regulations?
So Julia, it's a good question and a good point you're making. You are able to ask ZBA to put requirements on us that reflect your local regulations, as we've talked about several times tonight. You're absolutely able to do that. In the particular situation you're raising, you can't use regulations that you put in place after these, either of the two, the Farm Road or the Greenwood Homes, which we're talking about right now, were put in where to put it simply, your regulations, your new regulations that you're alluding to, were put in place in November, and we put in both of our applications. One I think was July, and the other was I think September, well ahead of the November regulation. So you would not be allowed in that, to ask for regulations that you didn't have in place when we put the applications in. That just, your lawyers can tell you that, but I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought, and it's helpful to hear that as well, because I do think it's a big difference for establishing a well, whether or not you have to test for PFAS and treat for it. So I guess in all of this, Matt, the thing that and I liked whatever the last iteration was that Daryl said. Certainly the quantity and quality to me are the biggest concerns in following our regulations over necessarily distance from setback.
Mark, go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering, as we're discussing this, I can give you a summary of the differences in, as I mentioned, we talked about quality and quantity, but as for each lot, I can at least let the board know that what complied and what did not with our local regulations versus, well, there are no regulations on distances, but on lot one, if the board so wishes, lot one, they have 161 feet from the well to the septic. That's actually okay. Their perk rates were over a 3, so there's no additional 25 feet. But the property line was 11 feet from the well to the property line versus our required 25. So that's the difference there. On lot 2, the local regulation would require 150 feet for the downhill well. And right now it's at 122.66 feet. And the property line. The property line on this one was not an issue. I think this one was the one that was distanced quite a bit from the property line. And no, this one actually 11 feet to the property line versus the required 25 feet at the local level. Lot 3, they are at 108 feet between the septic system and the well versus the required 150 feet. On this property, lot 3, the property line distance is okay. It's greater than 25 feet. And for lot 4, the lot line is the issue on lot 4. And lot 4, instead of 25 feet as required, it's 11 feet, just so you have a summary of the distances that are being presented in these Title V plans.
Thanks, Mark. That's really helpful. And I agree with Julie that I think the setbacks are probably less of a concern. But I think both of these are captured by what Daryl suggested, which was that we suggest to ZBA that they try to ensure that the wells comply with local regulations in effect at the time of the application to the greatest extent possible.
Right, and I agree with you that the setbacks and property lines are there. I believe were established under the ideas that Mass DEP also goes by, which is that the zone around your wellhead and the land within that zone, certain whatever, however large you want to define that, is the area most likely to have impact on the quality of the water in your well. So if someone put an outhouse next to their well, that's probably going to be introducing bacteria into your water, that kind of thing. So the setbacks were also a way of trying to give people control over what activity is taking place on the land closest to their wellheads. So this is going to go to how neighbors get along and treat one another. It'll have to rely a bit more on that rather than ownership of that land, but it's not the only thing that will affect groundwater quality by any stretch.
Okay. All good points. How do we feel about the suggestion that Daryl proposed? For compliance to the maximum extent possible. Somebody want to make a motion?
Can I ask I'm sorry.
I think it should
No, please do.
comply, not to the maximum extent possible, but it should just comply. And the Board of Health should request that it complies.
We already know that it doesn't comply.
Right, but that's a decision for the ZBA, right? I mean, I don't think it should go through. If it doesn't comply, it already is risky because we can't control things and it's private water supplies and people have to sue their neighbors and there's no state backup and it's really unfortunate. So if it doesn't comply, it doesn't comply. I mean, I would like to be able to say, sure, no problem, but it's not fair for me to make a decision that affects other people who don't have any recourse. It's not fair for me to say, oh, sure, no problem, doesn't affect me. It affects them and it's not fair to them because our responsibility of the Board of Health is to enforce our regulations and protect the drinking water of future homeowners.
So I think we're working on that. And I think
I know.
What I would particularly say, Matt, to just add on to that is I feel like I want to point an arrow to quantity and quality. I think if we need to flag something to them, and that's what I'm kind of throwing out there to the board, do we need to add in a clause at the end, especially quantity and quality at time of establishment and again at the tap?
I think that's reasonable. I think part of the goal in crafting this is to because the ZBA is going to be deciding on the comprehensive permit, not to put them in a position in which we've totally tied their hands, because they're considering a lot of factors. I think we want to signal to them what's important to us without sort of putting them in a position where they have to just ignore us or or say no to the whole project, right? Because ultimately they have other priorities, right, too. And so I think a way to do that is to say we would encourage compliance to the greatest extent possible, particularly with regards to water quantity and quality from the on-site wells. Does that capture what you're thinking, Julie?
It does.
I like that approach, because I'm concerned if we say a blanket comply with everything, they're not given any guidance as
But I don't
they
think they
deliberate.
understand what the issues, I mean, they can't understand the issues. I mean, to say to the extent possible, that's completely vague and has no strength. I mean, it doesn't protect the drinking water. It's just sort of vague.
I mean, I think, Rebecca, I mean, I think just to be clear, I think you think this project shouldn't happen. I think that's a valid position to take.
I think the project should meet regulations or be changed so that it meets regulations. Like
okay. So let me rephrase. The project as
better.
proposed shouldn't happen.
Okay.
And I think that's a valid position to take. I think we're not all there. But that's fair.
And I think we also have the experience of seeing how decisions go if they are sent to housing court.
There's a
To
landmark
make
case
so we're
contradicts
in a tough position.
I think we should have a vote. And I think people should vote their conscience. And I think that's fine.
I'd like to just to ask Mark another question. So there's quality, quantity. I'm not so sure there's that much difference on well installation procedures.
Well, we do have a pump rate requirement.
Yes, that was the
quantity. Yeah, we require.
So that'll tie into quantity. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And then we require that they fill out. Oh, go ahead, Darryl. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And so they are required to fill out a well pump data form, which is a local form. By state forms, they have to fill out the drill report form. So that's a separate form that we require. And as it relates to the protection of the well, we require that a well apron be placed at the well and that it be set in accordance with our regulations, so many feet into the ground with bentonite or another protective type of material to prevent anything from leaking in to where the seam occurs. So we do have a variety of requirements. We require a 40-gallon pressure tank. We also, I think it's 40 or 38. We also require that they do the tap test as well. And we have other requirements if via volatile shows and respect to deep recordings. So within the quality and quantity, we have regulations that overview all that.
Okay, so I think if we talk about quality and then we can specify that with ZBA if they have questions. So we have quality controls on a number of levels, the quantity with the pump tests, the tank size, is that any kind of a nod to our loss of power in an area with a lot of trees? Is that part of that?
Unfortunately, it's not. That tank is it pressurizes the water. It's not really for storage. Now, people can put in additional storage tanks so they have water on hand, but we always recommend that their best bet is to put in a Gentrans switch so they can connect to a generator so that the well works. And if they have a septic system that works on pumps, that can work as well. So
okay, but they can add that on later when they own the home and want to make those upgrades. So then I guess the other one that ties to quality but is a little bit different approach than the testing requirements would be the integrity of the well's construction with the seal and the apron.
That is
And
correct.
that is going to be helpful, again, to avoiding having any kind of contamination that uses the casing as a conduit of sorts to run down the outside of the casing and into the groundwater right next to the draw.
Yes.
So those seem like three key. So quality, quantity, and
Well, construction.
construction, yeah. I'm trying
And
to
I
think of like the hierarchy of what we're guiding them to in our regs that are important.
And I think it's also important to remember that, like, you know, we as a board make this recommendation, but then a representative of the board, you know, can be available to ZBA to clarify.
Yes, and that next meeting is Tuesday, the 16th at 7 p.m., by the way.
I don't know if the board's concerned, but we only allow one well per property, so that could be another consideration for discussion.
Oh, yes.
Irrigation well.
Ooh, that's a good one. That goes to the quantity, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Kind of preserving the quantity for all, not upping the quantity per property.
I mean, I think as proposed, there's only one well proposed on these properties. If someone wanted to go then dig an irrigation well, that would go back to ZBA or that would go to us?
Oh, well, maybe that's a question then. I think for them, we would recommend limiting it to one well if it isn't going to go in the future. If these properties don't go through the normal channels, they, right, as you say, they go back to ZBA again or some other process.
So it sounds like we have a number of suggestions. Our suggestions are that well construction comply with local regs, that testing for quantity and quality comply with local regs, and that no additional wells be installed in the future per property.
Yes.
No more than one well per property is a better way to say that. I just want to be clear, we're not telling them they can never replace their well, but. So maybe those are the three things we should specifically request. And so what that does is it says setbacks, we get it. There's no way this can happen with our setbacks. That's an overall risk benefit analysis, fine. But the other components we would like to see in compliance, which should be feasible.
I like that.
Okay.
I count 4 conditions, but anyway, 4 recommendations.
So
Right.
you're not recommending the setbacks meet our local regs? Just to clarify?
I think that's not something we're calling out specifically, yes. Because we know that saying that basically just says we don't think this project should happen at all. Which again is a position you could take, but I think it's not the position I'm ready to take. So our 4 suggestions then are compliance on well construction, or well construction be compliant with local regulations. Water quality testing be compliant with local regulations. Water quantity testing be compliant with local regulations. And that going forward, no more than one well be allowed to be installed per property. Is that correct?
I agree with that.
Somebody want to move that, those 4 suggestions?
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
So do I have to decline this vote? Okay, I guess I say Rebecca Honeywell, nay.
Darrell Beardsley, aye.
I mean, alternatively, Rebecca, you could vote yay for this and then move the other, but it's up to you. Either way, it passed.
What do you mean move the other?
If you support these 4, you could vote for them, and then if you wanted to do something else, you could suggest that as a separate motion.
I think that the project should meet all the regulations, because they could be stronger than they are to begin with. So I don't really know how to move that. I support this, but I don't support omitting the distances, because that's the only thing we can do to have any kind of protection at all when there's a slow
I
a
think
high
it's the
flow
only
rate.
thing we can do, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I think we voted on this, and if there's a separate motion you think of, that's fine. But if you don't have one, then that's okay too. All right. I think that closes Greenwood then. Next and related.
Matt, can I ask a question of the board? So normally, when we have our septic plan, we stamp them after they're approved, because we don't actually, that becomes the permit. Is that the wish of the board with the noted condition on the well? Should we note that on the plan? Procedurally, I'm just not for sure where I should go with this at this point.
I think we can wait for a ZBA chance to ask them.
Okay. Okay, then they can get our minutes too if they need it, or
Yeah.
and they can contact us, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think the next topic for discussion is the next 40B, the farm road homes. I think probably the first question, there are a number of documents here. We have septic plans, we have the hydrogeologic evaluation, we have the well group submittal here. Mark, have you started your review of these?
Yes, I have. I actually had a chance to sit down with the engineer, Deisheng Wang, as well as the consultant for Tetra. And we reviewed it about 2 weeks ago. It was just before Christmas. And there are some needs today. One of those needs, per the consultant for the town, was to do some sieve analysis. So I witnessed today with Deisheng and his assistant the actual grabbing of those soil samples. They grabbed 2 soil samples. If you look at the plan down where the leaching field is, they were trying to go into both areas of the leaching area. And in our discussion also, there was concerns about our soil testing matching. So I sent the engineer my soil book logs, and he noted that he's planning to review his soil test logs to see where the variations may be. And hopefully we can meet again to discuss that. As it relates to the septic system itself, there were some comments made by our consultant related to various more the dynamics of the flow and so forth. And he did note that the engineer for his firm will need to review that, since these are large flows coming into the septic tanks. And discussion did take place on the innovative alternative technology, but no decision has been made by either our consultants. There are 2 consultants dealing with this plan, a geohydrologist as well as an engineer. And until Deisheng and I can get to the point of the soil testing, there's still further discussion to take place. And I'm hoping to be able to talk to the civil engineer as well, in respect to the septic system. And that's where we stand. And the groundwater mounting and all that will also need to be reviewed by our Tetra consulting.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So
You're
sounds like well underway.
Yes.
Still some things to iron out, and getting a lot of input from the consultants, which is I think what everyone had hoped for.
Yeah, that's correct.
Other comments from the board on this?
Something I'm not sure if there are plans that you've seen yet, Mark, that show where the various lines for septage and lines for water supply will be running, but I'm going to guess it's going to be a complicated aspect of reviewing this plan.
Yeah, and that was
Has that been worked out yet, or it's forthcoming?
No, I haven't received any revised plans, and that was discussed also in the conversation.
Okay.
And they will need to show those. That is a Title V requirement.
Yeah.
The legal boundaries became a discussion as well. Also, now that I have the notes in front of me, need for well permits. Again, almost the same discussion we had on Greenwood lots. Show the well on 55 Farm Road and label the houses with their addresses that abut this property. Now that I have my notes in front of me in the plan, show the water lines, show elevations on deep holes and perks, show perk times. Those are some of those are easy to do, but the discussion as it relates to public water versus private, I left that up for the board. And again, that's pretty much the review at this time, and the soil testing confirmation from the engineer and myself to sit down and see why there's variable numbers, like he has maybe a different start time, or it's something I think we can resolve with a sit down meeting.
Hey, Mark, I have a really quick question based on your comment just now. You suggested that there was some issue with the legal boundaries and
not issue, just
sorry.
Just to say if they are legal boundaries, that's all.
Oh, well, I mean, we have meets and bounds on the entire 14 acres. I own it. I mean, this is very different from Greenwood where we're doing A&Rs. The A&R is long done. All the boundaries are completely, defined by very, specific meets and bounds. There should be no issues on legal boundaries here.
That's fine. And Deschang just needs to put a note on it that these are legal boundaries. That's as easy as that. Thank you.
So it sounds like there are a lot of sort of relatively straightforward editing issues like we saw in the last one that hopefully will just be resolved with revisions. And then there are some larger discussions that's going to, require sort of reconciling you and Deschang and the consultants.
Correct.
I see there's an iPhone raised hand. Before I go to that, are there more comments from the board? Seems like something we're going to be revisiting frequently. Okay, then I will go ahead and acknowledge whoever the iPhone is.
Hey, Matt, it's Mary Moore, 49 Farm Road, right below.
Oh, hey, now your picture popped up. Thanks.
Sorry. I just had a question. So the public hearing for this 40B as well as the Greenwood one expires technically on January 28th. And I know it's up to the ZBA to negotiate an extension with the applicant if he's so willing to extend that. But I guess I just feel like there's so many outstanding items related to the review of this septic since it was presented and delivered so late. I don't know if there's a comment that you could share with the ZBA before the next meeting that might suggest how much time you need for it. I mean, the Greenwood project is fairly straightforward and that's taken a couple months. So I'm concerned that we're running out of time and that the ZBA will be forced to condition something that may or may not reflect the science of this parcel and the 32 homes and the 8,000 gallons of septage coming down towards our house and our well. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the comment. Brian, did you want to comment as well?
Sorry, but I was trying to get the mute button. Yeah, my comments, obviously, I echo exactly what Mary thinks, and I'm also concerned that Tetra Tech's review as the peer review consultant for the ZBA is kind of it appears to me that that's more like a high level review. And I would go so far as to suggest that your board may wish to consider asking ZBA to get someone from like Novus Engineering or another hydrogeologist to actually look at the mounding aspects of this project. And I wanted to also hear just, put into your minds that previous comments that this engineer has made on other 40B projects in town say it's hard and unrealistic to ask an individual to do such a study, meaning an efficacy study for private wells or for septics, when their use and land area ratio is low. But a large scale project in a relatively small land area, it should be a must do. Those are this own engineer's comments from the other side of the hill. I think that we should really make sure that when it comes to permitting the wells for this, that their real pump tests are done, that they really do drawdown analysis. The bedrock is right beneath the surface, and that, maybe we consider getting Novus or a third hydrogeologist to look at the mounding effects of the combined stormwater and the septic systems are going to have on this project and on the neighbors and on the wetlands and the other resources that the town and our neighborhood relies on. Those are the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Appreciate it. Arthur? Benno? You're on mute. Still muted, Arthur. All right, maybe we'll come back. Are there other comments in the meantime? Arthur, feel free to chime in once you get on.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you go.
Did that work?
Yep, there you go.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I'm doing this. I had coming from another meeting, so I'm doing this on a mobile device in my car. I mostly just wanted to echo what Brian and Mary said. There's a lot of concern in the neighborhood about safe drinking water, potable drinking water, and the concern and the effect that such a large septic system will have on that. Plus, groundwater and other things that were highlighted, particularly after the last storm. And there just doesn't seem to be the time for the health agent and the developers, engineers, and other responsible parties, which I think should also weigh in on this before the last meeting that's scheduled before the ZBA. And then after that, it's too late, and it's too late for my drinking water and for our neighbors' drinking water. So I don't know. I guess there's no way for this board to compel the ZBA, or if the ZBA even has the authority to extend the hearing time. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and then, and I don't know how it can happen. So if there's a way that you can, I guess, impress upon that, or try to accelerate this process, or to involve as many other parties as possible. Time is of the essence, and it's running out. So I want to say exactly what Mary said, what Brian said. They're much more articulate on this issue than I am, but I can't express or impress my concerns about this enough. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Sarah Tipton.
Oh, good. I finally. So I've lived here 50 plus years. I always thought that this land was not supposed to be divided. And so I'm just wondering, where are we with that?
So ultimately, this is a 40B project, and decisions on its approval go through the ZBA. And that's what I can say. That's not a Board of Health decision.
Right, we have nothing to do with the land,
so
how it's configured and what the easements are, or whatever else are the issues there.
So who does decide that?
So the 40B comprehensive permits are presented before and decided upon by the Zoning Board of Appeals, the ZBA.
Yeah, right. But as I understood, this land belonged to two people. They had they had an agreement to make it one piece of property, but it was not supposed to be divided. So who is taking care of that? It doesn't.
So the land is now owned by Mr. Murchison, and he has opted to apply for a 40B, and the ZBA is making the determination on that.
Right, but I mean, so if the land was not supposed to be divided, who decides that?
The ZBA. The ZBA is the one who will decide whether he can build this 40B here.
And is that being investigated?
So yes, that's what we're talking about. He applied for this some time ago. On the town website, you'll see information about the ongoing ZBA hearings. The ZBA hearing on this is scheduled for later this month, and everyone's having concerns. The concerns everyone else has raised about us as the Board of Health. Our job is to review the septic system, and so everyone has raised concerns about our ability to do that in a timely fashion prior to the ZBA review later this month.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful. It's just it's not the Board of Health sort of decision there. Rebecca?
I am wondering if the chair and the vice chair and the other members of the Board of Health have any concerns about the very detailed and specific analysis that was done by a licensed site professional who has a lot of experience in this and who identified some significant errors in the analysis of the engineer. I think as a board, but as you know, I often am dissenting from the board because I'm very concerned about drinking water. I think we as a Board of Health should be enforcing our regulations. We know that the state does fall on us and our regs, even though we don't seem to always enforce our own regs.
Hey, Rebecca, I
think
appreciate
we
your
need
comments, but
to-
I would try to ask you to avoid from disparaging the other board members. You seem to
I'm
suggest the rest of us
completely
don't care.
perplexed by the consistency with which we give variances and we do not enforce our own regulations. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. We as a Board of Health have a very important responsibility because we have private water supplies in Sherborn. We are not only potentially endangering the future residents of this development, that includes affordable housing. We know that at the state level, it is important and it is of priority to have safe drinking water in affordable housing. And we also know that we are potentially endangering abutters, downstream residents of affordable housing in town and other natural resources with this proposed project. There has been at least one case where a fully permitted 40B project was rescinded at the state level because of the potential to contaminate one abutter. This project has the potential to contaminate multiple other, not just one abutter. And I think we as a board need to analyze and seriously consider the comments that were made in a letter that was posted on the town website several weeks ago that identifies errors in the analysis of the engineer for this project. What does the rest
Rebecca,
of the board think?
I appreciate that. I think you know, our role here is going to be similar to before, which is to see if the septic is Title V compliant. We're not ready to do that yet. And then it's going to be to make suggestions to the ZBA. Daryl, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I want to, well, shift to a bit of a discussion about what else we might want to have done. I think it's a little tough to be, you know, crystal clear on that right now because there's still information coming in, right? There were just soil samples taken that need to go through sieve analysis. That information needs to be woven in to evaluation of the septic system. There's the mounding analysis yet to be done. That is a Title V requirement for a system of this size. And that will be peer reviewed. And again, I don't know if Jeremy is still on and could comment, but back when this process was starting, the Board of Health provided input about what technical expertises we would need help with from a peer reviewer. So I believe that was then rolled into choosing which firm would serve as peer reviewers. So I'm really hoping that they have that expertise in-house. If not, we need to find out about that as soon as possible and figure out how that's going to be addressed. But for now, I'm assuming that Tetra Tech has that experience and expertise. The other is something that we've asked for on the other projects like this, and that is to have an EHIR performed, which is one of our regulatory requirements in Sherborn. But given, again, and for all the same reasons that we've asked for it before, given the magnitude of the and concentration of the discharge from this system and the potential impacts, having that sort of evaluation would be valuable not only to the neighbors, but to the multiple wells that are going to be serving this project. So I think that, to me, that is a really important request to make to the ZBA.
Thank you, Daryl. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think concrete actions like that are helpful. You know, I think we can go in circles all day saying that like it's our job to protect groundwater, and we all know that, right? So we need concrete steps we can take, and I think that's a good concrete thing we can suggest to the ZBA. I think much like we saw concrete things we suggested to the ZBA in the last review. You know, I think everyone is concerned about the safety of this, and we're trying to do our job to review it. I guess
And
there's a question, Daryl, of timing.
Yep. Time is the concern that we share with everyone else who has spoken about that.
Gerald, do you feel there are specific actions we should take tonight, or do you feel that we still need to receive more information? I mean, there's definitely more information. There are some things we certainly can't do until we get more information, but I don't know if it makes sense to make recommendations prior to sort of doing it all together once we have everything we need.
Well, probably checking with either ZBA or town administration about the availability and the expertise. So availability of funds for the peer reviewer to assist with, again, the two major things, one being mounding analysis, the other being EHIR, but EHIR hasn't been determined yet. So probably making that recommendation as soon as possible to ZBA would be helpful. And knowing whether we have the resources available from the peer reviewer to help with those issues. And with, I guess, again, the yeah, hold on, I'd have to think about for a minute what else we might want to ask for, but that seems like the first thing because that would influence what else we seek. If we were told that, sure, the peer reviewer is working on it or ready to work on it, you know, as soon as this last bit of information comes in, to weave into the information that's already available, great. If that answer isn't yes on that, then we're going to have to think of something else. And saying that makes me think possibly we would need another meeting before our next meeting because of any other communications we might want to have with CBA in advance of their next meeting.
Yeah. So maybe what we're coming to, and then I'm going to go to Julie from the board before I go back to the Moores, or I want to sort of wrap up some discussion with the board on this. And so maybe where we're headed is sort of a authorization by the board for the chair or me or whomever to sort of communicate those issues to the ZBA to get some clarity, and then we can decide about whether we need to add another meeting. We could also potentially even sort of vote now on whether we want to suggest an EHIR based on the information we have. So those might be two actionable things. Julie, go ahead.
I was going to piggyback off of what Daryl was saying. So I agree. We should request for an EHIR. I completely agree with that. Going back to looking at the Fields of Sherborn, which is the most comparable size project we've had in town, when we did retain Nobis. This is outside of my pay grade. So Daryl, I know you were trying to fill this in terms of trying to think about what we would need in addition to a mounding analysis. In that study, they also did a nitrate suspension analysis and a mass balance analysis. I might look to Mark to tell me if that is something we would want to possibly request. I understand that funds may or may not be available, but just to try to add in some technical questions. And that's one part. My second part was going to be a process question, but Matt, that's kind of off track from our train of thought, so I can come back to it.
Okay.
I'll just
Don't forget
address.
and remind me. Go ahead, Daryl.
I was going to say for the EHIR, that nitrogen loading analysis is part of it, the area of impact, and involves mass balance. So it's all kind of part of that package of determining what's coming out from a leaching field, what are the groundwater conditions that then can dictate, you know, what the flow direction is and the concentration set of materials that result, with nitrogen not being the only important constituent. It's merely used as a marker for analysis to indicate that, you know, if it's present in a ratio typically of 5 to 1 compared to contaminant Y, then that's how you can use the nitrogen information and the resulting numbers. It's just a way to focus it. So it's called nitrogen analysis, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing worth considering or that it indicates. So that's that.
Thank you,
So
Daryl.
that is what the EHIR is about in
So
large part.
I feel even more strongly that we really need the EHIR.
So what was your process question, Julie? Just so we can.
So going back to when we were talking at Greenwood, if we are the permitting body for the septic permit, and let's say that this hearing does end at 180 days, which I hope it does not, and we have not issued a permit, what happens? And I don't know if our board can answer that, but that would be a broader question I'd have to probably the ZBA.
It'd be hard to do without the mounding analysis, which again is a Title V requirement for systems over 2,000 gallons per day.
So as long as we have not resolved these Title V issues, and if we have not permitted this, I don't see how this can move forward. Am I on track with that? I'm asking the rest of my board members because this is my first go around with 40Bs.
I seem to have some recollection that at a ZBA meeting that even if it wasn't done, if everything wasn't done, we might be forced to make a decision, which I'm not sure how we would approve something if its evaluation hadn't been completed.
Exactly.
Outside of our control, wholly outside of our control if the mounding analysis isn't done.
And so maybe there's two parts there. One is to just emphasize to ZBA our need for receiving these things and having enough time to review them. And then two, it could be a question for council on the process. Other comments for the board before I go through other comments in the order I saw them?
If I can, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
You're off my screen.
Okay.
There you are. Go ahead.
Just so you know, too, in the review we had with the consultant, there was discussion on mounding analysis and the use of the saturated thickness use with the wetlands as a constant head value. And it's a little bit past what I understand, but the consultant still had concerns about it. So I think we need to reach out to our consultants, there's two of them, and ask where they stand to make sure we're ready to request or not request a continuation of this, because their review is going to be very important as well.
So I think we're sort of narrowing down on needing to sort of authorize some offline discussions with consultants and ZBA to ensure we have an appropriate timeline. And then it sounds like we maybe as a board are ready to sort of recommend an EHIR at this point to ZBA just so they have a heads up. We'll come back to that. First, I'll take some more comments. I think Brian had your hand up first.
I had a very quick comment. I think it's very wise for this board to consider and should feel entirely justified in asking for an extension, considering that nearly 5/6 of the time had gone by during the 40B 180-day review process before a final application was, posted. It was posted immediately before the last ZBA meeting. It's not fair that, the town be held to a different timeline. The application should be full, complete, and accurate before you guys have to table it at all. And I think that that's a challenge. That's been a challenge in this case. And there's many ways also that you can condition approval if you're backed into a corner. I've even heard of some boards conditioning approvals on a reduced number of housing. So it's entirely within your power to condition this so that, we think that the nitrate loading is too much. We only want to do a septic system half that size or something also. That is entirely within your powers as well. And I wish you luck. I really think that you guys have a tough challenge in front of you here with such a short period of time, and we'll do our best to try to support you in your endeavors.
Thanks, Brian. I think Arthur was next.
All right, let's see if I can get this the next time. So I think I believe I saw the developer on this Zoom, and so perhaps the board could ask him for a verbal agreement to give the the Board of Health more time to keep the ZBA hearing open, just so this board has the chance to have a fully informed discussion and opinion before instead of being sort of backed into or shoehorned into trying to make the best decision it can, which I'm sure will be the best decision it can. But if it had more time, could be ultimately a better decision and a more fully informed decision. And if the developer would be willing to make that agreement or commitment, so that this board has that opportunity to keep the ZBA hearing open until the board has that opportunity.
Thanks, Arthur. I think ultimately negotiations on timing have to happen between the ZBA and the developer. So we can talk to the ZBA, they can talk to the developer about the timing of that, but I think we can't do that directly. But I appreciate it.
Well, but I mean, I think you could ask. I mean, I think if he's on the Zoom now, you could just ask him and say, don't you feel that having this board be able to have a fully informed discussion and render an opinion is important enough to keep the ZBA hearing open? And if you feel that way, will you agree to, with the ZBA separately, understanding it's not within this board's purview, but agree with the ZBA separately to keep the hearing open until such time as that can happen? I think that's a discussion you could have with him now, and whether he makes that agreement with the ZBA or not, then that is a separate issue. I think, is that clear? Like,
No, I understand what you're asking. I understand what you're asking. Yeah, thanks. Next, I think Tom's trainer's hand was up.
Thank you, Tom Trainer, 97 Washington Street. I share some of the concerns of both board members and residents of Butters about the size of and density of the proposed multifamily septic system, 8,000 gallons a day or more. And Daryl, you brought it up. I believe Title V has extra regulations above and beyond, our standard, single family septics at the 10,000 gallons per day that trigger the ability for a Board of Health to ask for, I thought it was both a mounding study and a nitrogen loading study. And that's built into Title V, but correct me if I'm wrong. And by focusing on that, I think it simplifies. You might request the EHIR, but that's a local regulation, as I also understand. So, would Mark or Daryl know, is the 2,000 gallons per day trigger a nitrogen loading study?
Mark, do you want to answer that before I go on?
I don't believe so, but
answer the same way, Daryl. What you have is it requires groundwater mounding is what it requires, but I don't believe it requires a nitrogen review outside of a review.
I'm trying to remember what the trigger is for that AOI elsewhere. It is something, but at the moment it's just not coming to mind.
I'll look it up tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I think the last hand I see is Desheng.
Yeah, thank you. I just trying to provide in some information. Sort of, I heard all of those lots of good comments and legit concern, and we appreciate. Well, as a design engineer, I appreciate any input perspective. So the first thing is about the groundwater mounting. Sort of, when we submitted the design plan, we did also submit a hydrogeological evaluation per the Title V requirement, which include groundwater mounting. And we already had a one-time review and had a meeting, and Mark also attended. So at the meeting, and so Mark, you can correct me, but some of the terms may be a little bit confusing. So that's why I try to just give the board like a quick summary. So we did use the two drilled well at the 53 and the 55 for the aquifer depths, which is very reasonable because it's at the next to the site and in the same geological setting and comparable with our deepest soil test pit. And for the hydraulic conductivity based on our perk and soil texture, and we did show the peer reviewer where we get that number from hydrogeologic expert books. And but we not only stop there, that number used is reasonable from the peer review at this at the meeting, but we did agree to taking further steps to taking soil samples to analyze further the hydraulic conductivity. So that's why we were there today, and then Mark witnessed the soil texture and sampling, and so we will presenting that result. As far as for the nitrogen budget analysis, I did a very detailed one for the homes as fields, and so it's not like something we don't do or we do not do. We did discuss it. It's not mandatory, but based on the understanding, all the neighbors, everybody, and I told my clients. So Bob agreed. We will conduct the nitrogen analysis. So even though we are not mandatory, but so to be as a responsible developer as well as a design engineer, we will do it. And so as far as the EHIR versus hydrogeologic evaluation, which overlaps a lot. So nitrogen and nitrogen loading and the groundwater mounting, etc. investigations and searching on all the neighbors, sensitive receptors, all that we all have done. Just one thing sort of the board to notice is under DEP requirement for this type of development and the IA technology, we only require to reduce the nitrogen level to 25 parts per million. And but we worked another mile to making the treatment effluent reduced to 19, and which is 23% better than what required. So I'm just that's just a fact in our design, and we are still working on all the details, and from our meeting with Mark and Tetra Tech consultant, who is a very senior, very experienced hydrogeologist, worked for DEP for many years, and actually developed all the groundwater mounting requirements in DEP. So he is not just a regular PE. He's like in a professional level hydrogeologist. I sort of just give you that information sort of for your reference. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Desheng. So I think Brian, I see your hand up again. I think at some point we gotta sort of limit this and take some actions. Do you have a brief comment?
My brief comment is that none of these actions between Desheng and Mark and this third-party reviewer are being witnessed or babysat or anything. They're being conducted behind closed doors. None of the results are published. They're not posted on the webpage. So those of us who are most likely going to be impacted by this do not have an opportunity to review them, and we don't have an opportunity to get them in front of our experts, and we're spending gobs of money on this stuff, and we're just being told it's okay, and it's not okay.
Thanks, Brian. I hope you're not questioning Mark's integrity here. I don't think that's how you meant it to come across. But
I'm not questioning Mark's integrity. I'm questioning how the process takes place, the only people who are privy to the process are your agent and this engineer, and that might be fine for a private septic system off in the corner, but this is probably one, if not the most complicated Title V's that's ever been in front of this board. And my well is like, I can see it on the map on your page right there.
All right, thanks, Brian. We appreciate that. I think you know, we certainly can't do absolutely everything in public. People need to be able to have working meetings, and we have to be able to discuss the results of those meetings in public, which I think we'll continue to do. So in terms of actions for the board, for now, it sounds like there's a lot more information to come in. We will be continuing to discuss this. I think things we can do are authorize the chair to convey to ZBA, or to sort of check with ZBA on the progress of the consultant reports, and reemphasize to them what we will still need to make our determination. And then I think the other thing we could potentially do is to sort of, as a board, vote on whether we want to recommend an EHIR. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, to me.
Okay.
The other thing I'd just like to ask Deshang, whether they're using or whether this project is being done sort of along the lines of the aggregation plans regarding nitrogen loading. Is that part of this project, Deshang?
Yeah, well, when you're looking at, so we already, hydrogeological evaluation report, we discussed that portion. So the total nitrogen aggregate, so from the property is meet and exceed the requirements per the Title V requirement. So we are not exceeding any. That's why in our opinion, especially from the sightings, we located the system in the area downgrading pretty much from all the abutting wells we are aware of, including the proposed wells on our site, and including Mr. Moore's well and the 55 and 53 well. The any other wells cross a huge wetlands on Washington Street, which is not, it's not downgrading either. It's just far away. So we presented all those information in our findings. So therefore, the aggregation total nitrogen is meet the requirement, and that the only receptor I can think of really would have an immediate impact is the wetlands, and the wetlands doesn't require any specific nitrogen concentration number, which have been debated at the fields. And so for wells, yeah, you do have it. But again, we have lots of land, especially abutting the town conservation land. Also, some of the land is pitching this way, recharge water. And just from a common sense, I'm not just asking anybody take my word, and we will do the detailed analysis. But just from a common sense analysis, even though we only have 14 acres per se to go to this 40B 32 units, but technically including the town's conservation land, there's a 25 acres land is actually recharging and draining this way. So towards our septic systems. So it's that's what I'm just give you the facts, and we are still in the process. As far as the meeting happened in the town hall. So with Mark and the Tetra Tech consultant and the people around us, with both Secretary Alan and also conservation agent was there. So we just have to have that environmental working. We will present in our written response and the follow-ups, and will become public. We just cannot turn that information in as quick as we wish. So the meeting happened just before the holiday, and then so right after the holiday, we already get in the field taking the soil samples. So that's I'm just trying to give you chronicle and the facts, what we are doing and what we try to do, and not. I mean, I wish we can do even better and quicker, but we are doing our best.
Okay, so I guess I'll just mention, I think there might be something, what Tom Trina brought up before about the area of impact analysis might be tied to where a project falls with respect to aggregation plans. And I don't know enough about the details of what the criteria are for being in or out of that requirement. So that's one thing to check on. And then I just like to comment on something you mentioned about the 25 acres of conservation land nearby, and all that water is going to go and dilute the effluent. That's just not the way it works. Coming out of a septic field, flows are much more directional. If anyone's ever seen any study from a Superfund site about contamination plumes, things don't diffuse. It's not 25 acres worth of water, making sure it goes over and interacts with the plume from the septic. So it's not going to dilute things in the same way. It's other studies have shown that in town and elsewhere. So I just want to mention that for anyone who's listening to that explanation of the dilution issue. All right, but so Tom, maybe you and I will talk about these aggregation constructs for potentially applying that requirement through something other than our EHIR, or in addition to.
All right, so I think
very technical I don't think we can get resolving that the dilution issue, and the DEP's nitrogen analysis is basically in general is it's in that perspective plus the plume as we did with fields. So there's no but again, that's I mean we that's very technical, too technical. I think I don't even want to pretend I can 100% predict that. That's where to the maximum scientific possibility. That's what the DEP's aggregate nitrogen analysis guidelines would apply to anybody, and we will do that. Beyond that, that's just something we will see, and when things come into our way. So.
All right, I think we were in the middle of trying to determine an action by the board here. And I had proposed two. One, to authorize the chair to convey, to sort of check with the ZBA on the status of consultant reports and convey to them the additional information we'll need to rule on the septic system. Do I have a motion to authorize the chair to do that?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Any discussion on that point? Hearing none. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Errol Beardsley, aye.
And then I think that the second action we as a board suggested was to recommend to the ZBA that an EHAR be required for this project. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion from the board on that?
Could you repeat the motion?
That we recommend to ZBA that an EHIR be required for this project.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Matt, could I ask something?
I think not in the middle of a vote.
Okay.
Any discussion from the board on that? Hearing none. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Errol Beardsley, aye.
Mary, did you want to?
Thanks. Sorry, I'm not sure where this fits, but I did want to just point out that our expert has submitted a letter that's been posted on the public website that says that the nitrogen load, or whatever we're calling it, I'm sorry, I'm a little fumbling with my words here, will exceed the standards for Title V. So I would request that this board review that and include that in their request for an EHIR to the ZBA so that they are fully aware that this is, a real concern that you have.
Thank you. I think that makes sense. I think, we're hoping to collect all this information before we make any determination on Title V compliance.
And thank you guys for your time on this. I know it's been a pain in the neck.
So do we need a second to vote on that as a separate motion?
I don't think we need to at this point. I think that can probably fall under the category of additional information we will gather prior to making a Title V determination. It sounds like it's posted on the website, and so we can have that available to us. All right. I think I'd like to close the Farm Road 40B discussion for tonight. We'll definitely be discussing it at the next meeting, if not at a special meeting, given the short timelines. All right. Next items on the list. I'm just going to move down chair's business because there's one item left there. Daryl, do you want to comment on the opioid funds discussion?
I think I'd love to. I'm trying to remember exactly what that was. I believe, I think it was while we were in the budget meeting, Ellen. Wasn't that it with the town finances? And it was raised that the opioid funds are available. The town has received monies, and if the Board of Health would like to weigh in on what might be done with that, they would welcome input, guidance about how to use the monies. And there are a couple things that we've discussed in the past, before the monies even came out, with the Dover Board of Health. And that was maybe funneling some of the monies to the schools to beef up the programs again for substance abuse prevention, which has been done in the past. There were parent-run groups that used to organize things, and the board would provide funding for that. But those organizations seem to have disappeared over time, or if they've restarted, they have not contacted us again. Maybe they don't know that there might be monies available. So that is one option. Another is that it's also been discussed at the Charles River Health District whether the towns would want to organize around some activities. So part of that could be funded through the state program, or maybe we could join in and make something larger. So that's another option if anyone else has any ideas or would like to be involved with that particular topic, which is way outside my area of expertise, and would like to muse over that and come up with some ideas or pursue it further, that'd be great. So it doesn't have to be resolved tonight.
I mean, I think definitely for a future agenda and something we can all think about. Unfortunately, my interactions with substance use disorder tend to be after the fact rather than in prevention. So hopefully we'll be on the other side of things. However, the other member of my household does think about it a lot. So I will reach out to her for input as well.
Mm-hmm. And it could be, and I'm not saying that the other member of your household should be drawn into this Board of Health activity, but I could see getting input from people in the community too.
Yeah, absolutely.
On this, who might know more about it. So.
All right. Any other comments from the board on that, or maybe something for us to think about and talk about at the next meeting? Okay, sounds good. Next, Mark, can you give us an update on 110, 112 North Main?
Yes, and I don't know if Mr. Morton's here, but if not, he did respond to me. I explained to him that this was going to be updated on tonight's agenda, and he wrote back to me to tell me that he has been working with Dan McIntyre, and they gave him an estimate for the work, and he's hoping to contract with him by the end of January. And he said that would be for the soil testing and the plan design. And then at that point, he is also looking to possibly apply for septic loans from the state. And there could be a possibility, depending on cost and everything, that he may just sell the place. So I will tell him if he does choose the latter, which is to sell the place, that he needs to disclose to whoever is buying it that we're in need for the cesspool to be replaced, since it's already past the year that was allowed under our regulations. But hopefully he'll, be able to find the funding and stay there and work with us through the process. But that's the status at this time. And so I would ask the board to allow the extension till the, I would say, soil test season till the end of February, March, because I'm not for sure if you can test in February or January based on snow cover and so forth. So I'd ask the board extend it maybe till the end of the soil test season, but not any time after that, which would be actually April 30th. So to have plans available and ready for the board's review.
I think that's reasonable. I think it probably would be also reasonable to get an update at our first February meeting to ensure that he has actually contracted with Dan and that things are moving forward, even if the testing's not done by then.
Yeah. I'll let him know I need an update for the first February meeting as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. Anyone else on that one? All right. I think that brings us now to a number of permit renewals. Let's begin with the installer permits. We have installer permit renewals for Paul Lutazzi of Dover. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any in the midst of the food. As well as for Jeffrey Barrows, doing business as Barrows Trucking of Worcester, W.C. Rowe of Weston, Robert Vale of Walpole, and Curtis Septic of Northborough. Mark, any concerns with any of these?
No, I recommend approval of all of these installers, and just with the note that they are to do a pre-construction prior to any installation of a septic system.
All right. I believe last time Ellen let me move all these simultaneously, so I'm going to do the same here. Can I get a motion to approve the installer permit renewals for all of the listed installers subject to pre-construction conference?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion on those? Hearing none. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Becca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right. I think because the food requirements will have to go through and address the sodium and some further discussion on the volatiles. Let's do tobacco next. So we have a tobacco sales permit for Sherborn Fuel and for Sherborn Wine and Spirits. Any concerns about those? I think we didn't ask Tom earlier, but I actually don't know if tobacco is under his purview.
Yeah, he actually does, and he did recommend approval for both.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to approve the tobacco sales permit for Sherborn Fuel?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
Other than our usual caveat of wish somebody else was voting on this than us.
Yeah, I was gonna make my comment that it pains me to my soul as a person who takes care of vascular disease to approve this, but it is the rule, and so I will approve it. So Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Becca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye. On the plus side, it did give the Board of Health the opportunity to pass the first non-flavored nicotine delivery products prohibition in the state, so which is now more common, or even statewide at this point.
It is statewide now.
So
leading the way as always, Sherborn. Do I have a motion to approve the tobacco sales permit for Sherborn Wine and Spirits?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Matt Beavers, aye, with the same caveats.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Becca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right. For the food establishment permits, I think I'm going to move one by one through these because it sounds like there will be at least some further discussion on Sherborn fuel, and then I can note the sodium posting for each. So let's begin. And Tom earlier otherwise recommended approval. So let's begin. Do I have a motion to approve the food establishment permit renewal for Jordan Brothers Seafood?
Can I make an amendment?
Sure.
Only because Tom always wants us to say something.
Subject to compliance with all applicable laws.
Thank you. You got it.
Yeah.
And can we blanket that just to apply to all of these food permits?
I'll just say it over and over again. It's fine.
Oh, all right, great.
So
moved.
So great. Thank you.
And second.
And no further discussion. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. So next, do I have a motion to approve the to renew the food establishment permit for Sherborn Wine and Spirits, conditional to compliance with all applicable laws and conditional to a sodium posting for the sodium level of 75 milligrams per liter?
So moved.
Second.
If no further discussion, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve renewal of the food establishment permit for Rustic Pizza, conditional to compliance with all applicable laws and a sodium posting of 39 milligrams per liter?
So moved.
Second.
If no further discussion, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the food establishment permit renewal for Northern Management doing business as Duncan, subject to compliance with all applicable laws, as well as a sodium posting for their sodium level of 39 milligrams per liter?
So moved.
Seconded.
No further discussion. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the food establishment permit renewal for Head Home, subject to compliance with all applicable laws and conditional on a sodium posting for their level of 21.1 milligrams per liter?
So moved.
Seconded.
No further discussion. Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. So the last one then, I believe, is did I miss anything? No. The last one, I believe, then is the Sherborn fuel. And so the concern here, in addition to the sodium level, was it was acetone, Mark? Or was
Yes.
it multiple volatiles?
Tetrahydrofuran.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
And so it sounds like odd in that, even though the other places are not up for renewal now, it's appeared on several of them. And so it sounds like we need some more information.
Yes.
And so I guess our option is to approve conditional on sort of sorting that out.
Yes, and I haven't had a chance to look at the water reports for Rustic Pizza or Sherborn Wine and Spirits. So with those two, I'll check as well. But I think it's okay to issue the food permit for the time being, and it will need further research to make sure that these facilities, if we are seeing volatiles, if they're introduced or erroneous, or if they are in the water supply. And that's the research I need to do over the next couple of weeks, and I'll have an update for the next meeting.
And did the water report flag whether it exceeded a Massachusetts or federal standard yet? Or
not that I
just
know.
said it was detected?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I can just state it in the requirements for the food, for the water analyses for the food establishments. If volatiles are detected, it just requires that they do annual testing for volatiles. It doesn't require anything else.
Okay.
if they're not detected, they can go 5 years before they retest for volatiles.
Okay, so then in that case, maybe the right thing to do is to just say they need to test again next year. I mean, we should sort it out. If it's erroneous, but regardless, they should just repeat in next year's test.
Yeah, and we can discuss that later, because if it was the lab error, I don't know if they should be penalized. In
That's
looking at the 2 past reports for Sherborn Fuel and for another establishment, they did not have these volatiles last year. So I'm thinking it could be a lab contaminant that might have caused this to be introduced, because we're in parts per billion when we're looking at these volatile organic chemicals. So if it's in the air of the lab, it could have been introduced.
Plus, if the other one was at Heritage, that's a fair distance between those. Not enormous, but for it to show up in 3 places at once it's cause for questioning, I think.
And Daryl's been helping me a little bit with this as well. So my next step is to see if they had any trip lengths, to see if it showed up in those, as well as contact the lab to find, and Whitewater, who did the testing, and to see if it could have been introduced in the process of bringing that sample to the lab. So
because they sometimes hold on to retains if they had enough sample to put some aside for a while in case a question came up. So they might still have part of the sample.
Excellent.
For retest.
If the board doesn't mind, I'll keep in touch with Daryl and work through it, and we'll try to get you some answers for the next meeting. I'll try to get you some answers. I don't want to put you on the spot, Daryl, so I'll try to do that for the next meeting. Sorry, Daryl.
I'm happy to talk to you, Mark.
Oh, thank you.
So it sounds like for this one, the motion then would be to approve the food establishment permit renewal, conditional to compliance with all applicable laws, conditional to a sodium posting, and then conditional to establishing that either the volatile levels are spurious, or if not, that they be required to then begin annual testing.
Do you think there should be some kind of a notification for people who are drinking? Like, it could possibly apply to other places in town. Why don't we reevaluate it? Because maybe it should be, people should at least have a notification so they can make a decision.
And that's why I'll try to get an update to the board for the next meeting, and then the board can reassess if need be.
But our regulations don't require that for issuance of the permit.
No, they don't. And we've just allowed them to all get permits. So, but I just think we should care as a Board of Health.
Yeah, Rebecca, like, we all care, but we can't make up rules on the spot. Like, how many times do I have to say this?
Right. And we don't just issue permits. We require them to test the water, and then we check whether it meets drinking water standards. So we're not shirking any responsibility. It's just
I don't
what
think
the
we're
process
shirking
is.
responsibility. I'm just saying that this is a new finding. It's a emerging contaminant. There's no rule, but maybe we should just notify people.
There is a rule.
Notify
and the rule
who?
is that they have to have annual testing.
Yeah.
But if people in town who are,
And then we can make a regulation that requires that. But right now we don't have a regulation that requires that.
no,
It'll
but
be
we
in our
can
minutes.
notify people. It doesn't have to be a regulation. Sure, we can make a regulation. That's a great
Okay.
idea. But for
That I think
example, in towns that have public water supply, all they do is notify people, and then people can make their own decision. But I don't think we should know about something that might be of concern to people and not tell them. That's my opinion.
So that's fine. I think that
Clearly
we
don't
cannot
share it, but
require them
that's
to
okay.
post. We
So
cannot
what, can
require
we
them.
discuss it? If we prove that it's not that it's not just a lab error, can we discuss it again?
We cannot require them to post it. We're going to have follow up on this at the next meeting once Mark investigates, so we'll see something. We cannot require them to post it because that's not in the regulation. We can, I guess, stand on the street corner and say there's acetone in the water. That's fine. But I think for now, let's vote on the permit renewal, and then we will get follow up from Mark once he's investigated further.
Yes, and if it doesn't violate a drinking water standard, then it's not drinking things below drinking water standards all the time without being notified of everything that's in the water.
I don't think there's any reason we can't talk about it. It's just we can then.
We're
make a
talking
decision.
about it.
We're talking about it. If your
Yeah,
suggestion
Mark
is we
brought it
require
up.
a posting, we can't do that. What I have asked for is a motion to approve the food establishment permit renewal, conditional to 1, compliance with all applicable laws, 2, a sodium posting, and 3, ensuring that the test result are either spurious or if not, that they be required to move to annual testing for those.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Next item for discussion is minutes for approval. Ellen, how can we help you find time to do these? I know it's a huge burden and I know you're incredibly busy. What are the big barriers?
I don't know.
Can I ask a question, Ellen?
Sure.
But maybe, you know, one of the things, well, I can't say this about my home. My home is not a calm, quiet place, but if my home was a calm, quiet place, being able to do something like minutes at home would be helpful. But otherwise, I would need a uninterrupted, private, quiet location, which I know your desk is not. And would having that accommodation found within town hall or within the town campus be helpful? It may not solve everything, but it might help.
Yes, I've got to be away from the office.
Okay.
So I know and that's what one member of the personnel board brings up is, you know, having Ellen travel to town, but then go sit somewhere outside of town hall because there are no known reasonable offices that don't have mold or some other issues at the moment that are free, but maybe in the library, but not clear that the library has quite the right setup and privacy without it being a large conference room. And then the question becomes, could Ellen conduct also phone calls from there? Because when she's concentrating on the minutes, she's still responding to emails and phone calls constantly. But at least it's not, you know, she's just starting to focus again on a sentence and people come in and ask her something and she needs to respond to in-person things. So it's hard to find that kind of space. We don't have a library like Wellesley Library has banks of small study rooms that are marvelous, but our library doesn't have that kind of thing where Ellen could commandeer a space as easily.
I think my other question is just what is and I just want to make sure I understand correctly that you've been advised you can't do these from home anymore. What is the reason for that? And
it's in the personnel policy that that people are supposed to be working on site.
And I guess the question is that a thing we can overcome?
We can put in requests, and we have done that.
Yeah, I just wanted you to note that everyone else who does, every other board that has minutes, they do them from home.
So I think we should request to allow that. If that's what you would prefer, Ellen. I mean, alternatively, we find you a space. Like, I think whatever is going to work for you is what I think we want to try to achieve here.
I have done them from home for years.
Okay.
And my home is not like your home, Julie.
Oh, I'm happy for you.
It's very quiet. I have no children here.
And during COVID, you know, Ellen, as everybody, was working from home, and she was incredibly productive, and she has the setup there for it. But in any case, for whatever reason, it's a struggle.
I mean, can we make that request? Like, I think if the board says that this is sort of essential for us providing our function, then I think we can request of the town administrator or whoever the deciding individual is that Ellen be allowed to do that.
Yes.
Do we need to vote on that? Because I
I
agree.
think we should. Yeah.
Especially
But-
the standard of practice.
Yeah. So I would move that we request the town administrator. Is the town administrator the right person for this? Ellen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if he's still here. No. I would move that we request the town administrator that Ellen be permitted to work remotely in the preparation of minutes to ensure their timely completion and the essential functioning of the board.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion on that? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Becca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right. And then I think
That means the chair or the vice chair will be the one to submit the request. I guess I just realized we forgot to.
yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Last item is agenda for this next meeting on the 17th. Ellen, what do we have in the way of appointments?
We have no appointments. So
Wonderful. Love it.
wow.
So I think Farm Road 40B will definitely be on there. I think we should add opioid funds on there so that we just sort of keep that as something we're thinking about. Anything else you anticipate, Daryl, or you anticipate, Mark?
Yeah, I had a great idea for something earlier, but I'm forgetting what that is at the moment. So I'll send it in at some point.
I don't know if it would be helpful, but I may suggest that one of the consultants from Tetra join our meeting for the discussion of Farm Road homes.
Yeah, that would be great.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have to find out if that's okay for them to
Yeah.
attend a meeting other than a ZBA meeting.
I just realized because I know that discussion occurred on the funding of it and so forth. So yeah, for sure.
Well, that can maybe be part of the discussion we have with the ZBA about their process.
Now I remember what the idea was. So I think maybe we want to have Ellen get ready or to post the ZBA meeting on the 16th as a Board of Health meeting in the event that a quorum of Board of Health members, not obligatory, but at least we'd be ready to deliberate at that meeting if we need to.
Yeah.
16th or the 17th? The 16th.
Yeah, did I say 17th?
Well, I think
16th.
earlier.
Let me just check my calendar. I'm pretty sure it's Tuesday, the 16th. Yes,
Our meeting is the 17th.
7 p.m. And
Our meeting is the 17th. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think earlier tonight you mentioned that it was the 17th. I might be wrong.
I could have. I was trying to say 16th, but I can't speak as clearly as I used to be able to.
Well, at
My
the last
braces.
meeting, I was corrected by the applicant. I did say January 18th, but he corrected me and noted it's January 16th, which was confirmed by Jeannie Guthrie. So I believe it's the 16th.
And now that we're looking at that calendar, I look at my calendar and realize I probably can't make the meeting on the 17th, our meeting. Apologies.
Oh no.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'll listen to the recording for that phrase to go with food permits that you have memorized so well.
Wrote it down, Daryl. Don't worry.
Compliance with all applicable regulations.
Laws. Yep.
Compliance with all applicable laws, which
laws
feel like goes without saying, but I guess we say it.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the board have topics for the 17th?
Were we going to follow up with if Mark has any follow through from Whitewater or the lab? Is that?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, yes, that should be on. Absolutely.
That would be fine. Yeah, to put that on the agenda.
Anything else?
Not yet, and I think we have a lot to do.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. I was hoping done by 10, didn't make it. Oh, well.
So close.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Hywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Thank you, everyone.
Good night,
Thank you and good
everybody.
night.
Everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
All right. Good night.